Ines screamed her innocence, insisting she didn't harm her husband, but no one believed her. The trial was a total sham, a staged play designed from the start to prove her guilt. One by one, men took the stand, spinning vicious lies. They accused her of having an affair and buying flammable oil. A key witness swore they saw Ines go up a mountain with her husband, only to come back down completely alone. Branded a villain by the masses, she was left bound and defeated, facing her final day. A happy memory with Joseph flashed through her mind. Was any of it real? Snapped back to reality, Ines screamed that it wasn't true, that she would never do such a thing. But the judge was unmoved. He accused her of ending her husband's life and shamelessly denying her crime. The gavel slammed down, delivering the verdict: 30 years. The courtroom erupted in a frenzy. The crowd roared for her to be dealt with, hurling insults and condemning her on the spot. Her world completely fell apart. With the crowd roaring about her shamelessness, Ines was sentenced to the infamous Romfield prison. Her new life was a living nightmare. Each day was a brutal struggle for survival, where she was forced to eat discarded scraps and endure backbreaking labor. Overwhelmed by helplessness, her spirit slowly shattered until she could no longer feel anything at all. Ines endured this waking hell for 10 relentless years. And then, after a full decade of suffering, her tormented life finally reached its grim conclusion. One day, news of a royal pardon swept through the prison. A guard unlocked her cell, announcing that Ines Bainoa was being released by imperial order. After a decade in darkness, the sunlight was a blinding shock. As she stood there, disoriented, a guard named Homer approached her. He handed her a letter, explaining that one of her former maids had tearfully begged him to deliver it. Confused, Ines took the envelope. She managed a quiet thank you as he turned and walked away, leaving her completely alone in a world she barely recognized. Ines clutched the letter from her old maid, Suzanne, a small flicker of hope in her weary eyes. But as she read, that hope was extinguished. The letter wasn't a comfort, it was a catalogue of despair. It spoke of her mother's passing, the complete ruin of her family's name, and the final, devastating news that her father had taken his own life. Just as she escaped one prison, another, built of grief and guilt, rose around her. A cold voice whispered in her mind, telling her it was all her fault. The cruel voice in her head wouldn't stop. It hissed that she had ended everyone's lives, her husband, her mother, her father. It screamed that everything was ruined because of her, and now she was completely alone. Crushed by the weight of it all, Ines stumbled through the darkness, begging for the torment to end. She finally slipping away. Her body finally gave out, and she collapsed onto the cold ground. Her vision blurred, swirling into a kaleidoscope of brilliant colors as her consciousness faded. But instead of darkness, she found herself standing in a tranquil, otherworldly place beside a shimmering lake. A single thought consumed her. If she just walked into that water, all her pain would finally be over. She took a determined step forward. Suddenly, a powerful voice echoed through the air, delivering a stark warning from a being called Heclasia. Those who desire too much will return empty-handed. The voice's warning echoed around her, declaring that those who desire too much will return with nothing. A strange sense of peace washed over Ines. With a faint smile, she let her body fall backward, plunging into the tranquil water. As she sank into the cold, silent depths, a jolt of panic hit her. Bubbles streamed from her mouth as the shock set in. What had she done? Floating in the endless blue, she was suddenly overwhelmed by a crushing wave of regret, realizing her fatal mistake far too late. As Ines sank, her lungs burned for air. After enduring 10 brutal years in prison, she couldn't believe her freedom ended so emptily. Could any life be more tragic? A divine voice echoed around her, saying that if someone offered to walk with her, she should give them everything. But Ines rejected the thought. She had been prepared to give it all, but no one had ever reached out. Just as she resigned herself to the darkness, a hand shot through the water and firmly grasped her arm, pulling her back toward the light. Gasping for air, Ines found herself pulled from the water and laid on a sunlit, grassy bank. A mysterious voice echoed in her mind, instructing her to give everything she had to anyone who offered to walk with her. Before she could process the strange command, a shadow fell across her face. Looking up, she saw a stern-faced man with dark hair and piercing golden eyes staring down at her. Her mysterious savior had finally revealed himself, his expression unreadable as he gazed upon the woman he had just rescued from the brink. A cruel, shadowy voice mocked Ines in the darkness, telling her she had nowhere left to run. It declared her utterly alone. The voice tormented her, accusing her of being responsible for her family's terrible fate. As she crumbled in despair, a brilliant light suddenly appeared. A man emerged from the glow, calling her name and offering a hand. A wave of realization washed over Ines. This man, this single beacon of hope, was the only one who could pull her from the suffocating nightmare. She had to take his hand. A worried voice calling her name snaps Ines out of a deep nightmare. Her eyes flutter open to find Carson sitting by her bed, his hand holding hers as he asks what terrible dream had her in its grip. She quickly reassures him she's fine, thanking him for waking her. Carson deflects, telling her to thank the servants who've been worried sick all week. In that moment, she sees him clearly. Carson von Raymond, the prince, the lord, and the man who saved her. Since he pulled her from the darkness, a light has begun to shine through her terrors. Carson isn't buying her act. He points out that while she seems better, her terrifying episodes haven't completely stopped. Ines insists she's fine, but he presses her, demanding to know the real reason she fell into the lake a week ago. The question sends her spiraling into a dark memory. A cruel voice echoes in her mind, telling her she ruined everything and should have drowned. As she crumbles in despair, Carson's voice cuts through. Seeing her immense pain, he immediately backtracks, telling her it's okay not to speak and apologizing for upsetting her. Carson tells Ines that blaming herself won't make things better. Through her tears, she asks how that can be true when she's ruined everything for her family. He insists that no matter what, it is always better to live. He tells her life taught him this, but ultimately, the choice is hers to make. His words leave her stunned. For years, a jeering crowd's cruel words echoed in her mind, telling her she didn't deserve to live. As she clutches the sheets, a new thought emerges. Deep down, did she actually want to survive? Days later, a heavy rain pours down. A cloaked Ines trudges through a muddy cemetery, finally stopping at the grave she's been searching for. It's Joseph's. Staring at the cold stone, she feels numb. After a decade, there are no tears left to cry. The bitter inscription wishes him to rest with his resentment. She wonders if that anger is for her. Everyone blamed her for his end, a lie repeated so often that she started to question if she was truly the one responsible. Ines scoffs at the ridiculous thought that she was responsible for Joseph's fate. Deciding to finally break free from this torment, she pulls a ring from her finger. With a heavy heart, she declares she is letting him go for her own sake, letting the ring fall onto the cold stone. A painful memory of his sweet proposal flashes through her mind. Snapping back to reality, she whispers a final apology, vowing never to return. From now on, she will move on and live happily. Pulling her hood tight, she turns away from the grave. As Ines trudges through the empty, rain-soaked streets, she spots a figure walking ahead. She freezes, an impossible thought crossing her mind. Could it be Joseph? She shakes her head, he's gone. The man suddenly calls out, asking her to wait, then clutches his head in a flash of pain. Ines stares, her shock turning to horror. This is no hallucination or a random look-alike. A vivid memory of Joseph's face confirms her fear. Even after 12 years, she knows without a doubt. It's really him. It's Joseph. He calls her name, a chilling smile spreading across his face in the rain. Ines stumbles back, demanding to know why he's only appearing now after all this time. But his terrifying grin just widens, his eyes glowing with a sinister light. Frozen in fear, she doesn't notice the thundering hooves until it's too late. A horse rears up right in front of her. Her world flashes white before everything goes dark, ending in a violent splash of crimson. Her quest for revenge ends right there on the cold, wet stones. Ines lay broken on the wet cobblestones, her vision blurred by rain and agony. She couldn't understand what was happening. Her body wouldn't move. She reached a trembling hand toward Joseph, who sneered down at her, calling her a disgusting pest. He admitted he arranged the whole thing, disappointed the accident wasn't enough. He revealed he had faked his own end just to get her exiled, but she had returned too soon. Looking at her helpless form, he dared her to get revenge, if she could. As her life slipped away, Ines's mind raced with one agonizing question for Joseph. Had he ever truly loved her? In the encroaching darkness, a voice told her the choice was hers to make. A desperate rage ignited within her. She refused to perish like this, longing for the happy life he had stolen. Suddenly, a brilliant light consumed her. Ines bolted upright in her bed, gasping for air. The cold, bloody street was gone. She was safe, she was warm, and she was back in a time before it all went wrong. Ines jolts awake in bed, completely disoriented. Her last memory is the terrifying moment a carriage bore down on her. A familiar voice cuts through the fog, calling her name. She looks up, and her heart stops. It's her mother, a woman she never expected to see again. Ines dismisses it as just a dream, but her mom rushes to her side, her touch warm and real as she checks for a fever. She worriedly asks where Ines could have possibly been in such a heavy downpour, her face etched with concern. Overwhelmed with emotion, Ines believes this must be the first dream she's had in 10 long years. She keeps apologizing to her mother, who gently tells her to stop crying. As her mom turns to get fresh water, a sudden panic grips Ines. She begs her not to leave, terrified of waking up. But then, a shocking thought hits her. She throws her feet over the side of the bed and stands. Her ankle, the one that was permanently damaged, feels completely normal. The constant pain that plagued her for years is gone. Something feels wrong. Ines halts her mother and stumbles toward a mirror. The reflection sends a jolt through her. It's the face she had when she was 20. The shock is so intense, her legs give out and she collapses. Her mind races, piecing it all together. Her mother is alive, her face is young, and her once broken ankle is completely healed. This isn't a dream. It all points to one impossible truth. Looking up at her mother with wide, desperate eyes, she asks the one question that will confirm everything. With a shaky voice, Ines asks her mother a strange question, her age. Confused, her mom replies that she's 39. The numbers click in Ines's mind. If her mother is 39, that means she's 20. This is real. She's been sent back 12 years into the past. Later, Ines sits across from her fiancé, Joseph, in a sunlit garden. He points out her unusual silence and asks if she's not having fun. Her gaze turns to ice as she looks at him. This is Joseph Binoa, the talented commoner-turned-knight, her future husband, and her killer. Her mind flashes back to the man who betrayed her, the one whose life she ended after just 1 year of marriage. He was persistent, a pest she just couldn't shake. But looking at the innocent face before her now, it's hard to see the monster underneath. Playing along, Ines forces a smile and assures him she's having fun. Joseph eats it up, blushing that he'd waited all day just to see her. She then sets her plan in motion, asking him to meet her on her upcoming birthday, the very day he proposed in her past life. With her scheme underway, Ines agrees to meet Joseph and then makes to leave. As she stands, Joseph stops her, unable to contain his excitement. He proudly announces he has officially become a knight for a count's family. Playing her part, Ines rushes forward and throws her arms around him in a tight hug. She praises him for being so amazing, but her inner thoughts are laced with contempt. She knows this fool has completely forgotten their difference in status, blinded by her calculated affection and empty words. Still in his arms, Ines continues her act, telling Joseph how happy she is for him. She quickly pushes him away and tells him to go, her sweet facade never faltering. A little confused, Joseph asks if she isn't curious which family hired him. She brushes it off, saying any count's family is a good thing. But once he's gone, the gears in her mind start turning. She remembers now, he joined Count Graham of Rizonia. It's strange. The Grahams didn't favor commoners. How did Joseph get in? As suspicion floods her mind, a voice suddenly asks her what she's thinking. Startled, Ines snaps back to reality. It's Carson. She forces a smile, dismissing his concern and telling him to stop by later. But Carson sees right through her act, asking why she keeps pushing him away. She blames it on her upcoming birthday, claiming she has a lot on her mind. As he walks over and sits down, a chilling memory consumes her. Her hands tremble, her vision darkens, and she sees it all again. The image of Joseph walking away after ending her life, leaving her completely and utterly alone in her final moments. A dark, violent urge grips Ines. The desire to end Joseph right now is overwhelming, but she quickly dismisses it as foolish. A quick end would be a mercy. Instead, a cold resolve hardens within her. This time, she will completely break him. She will shatter his spirit so thoroughly that he will beg for the end to come. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Palace, Carson stands before the Emperor and Empress. He formally requests to leave the Imperial family. The Emperor seems surprised, commenting on how his son has grown up so fast. Carson calmly replies that he is now 24. The Emperor seems hesitant, but the Empress has a plan. She points out that the Land Hill territory has no heir and proposes that Carson become its new lord. He agrees without hesitation. With the decision made, they give him a new mission: travel to Lazonia. The Emperor adds that on his way, Carson should bring his younger brother back with him. Kneeling, Carson gratefully accepts the offer, pledging his loyalty to the Empire. A determined glint in his eyes shows he is ready for this new chapter in his life. As Carson walks away, his mind burns with frustration. He knows the Empress still uses the Emperor like a personal messenger, pulling the strings from the shadows. Then, his father nonchalantly adds that he can pick up his younger sister, who is in Rsonia. Carson is floored. The Emperor has no idea what's happening with his own children. It's been 5 long years since Lucy Ann was taken away. Clenching his fist, Carson realizes how foolish he was to think his father would ever remember his own daughter. Carson is gutted. To his own father, the Emperor, he and his sister aren't even worth remembering. Meanwhile, back at the Binoa mansion, dinner is unusually quiet. Ines stares at her parents, her mind still reeling. She can't believe she's truly returned to this peaceful time. Her mother notices the change and asks her husband if Ines seems strange. Their once chatty daughter is now completely silent. But her father just brushes it off, claiming she's just maturing and that his wife worries too much. He has no idea what's really going on. Ines calmly tells her father that she's the same as always. Her mother waves off her husband's concerns, telling him not to worry. Trying to lighten the mood, her father asks if Ines has heard the news about Landhill getting a new lord. This instantly grabs her attention. The reason this is such a big deal goes back 35 years. The small territory of Swindon, once part of Rsonia, was cut off by a massive flood. The Empire quickly annexed it, making it part of Landhill. But Rsonia has never forgotten, constantly trying to reclaim its lost territory ever since. Ines's mother mentions she still has business in Rsonia, but will keep a close watch on Landhill. Her father then reveals the new lord's identity, the 8th prince, Carson Raymond. The name hits Ines like a ton of bricks, and her fork clatters onto the plate. Stunned, she asks when he's coming. Her father replies that he'll arrive in just 3 days. A vision of Carson flashes in her mind. She never imagined she would meet him again. He's apparently coming from Rsonia, tasked with escorting a princess to Landhill. Ines's mother adds that the princess is being educated by the Lord of Rsonia. That name sends a devastating memory crashing through Ines's mind. She remembers a battered woman, Lena, collapsing before her. Lena confessed that the Lord had promised to spare someone she loved if she dealt with Ines. But Lena's sorrow quickly twisted into madness. Grabbing Ines, she screamed maniacally, accusing Ines of ending a noble's life. The memory of that twisted betrayal leaves Ines frozen in the present. Lena's deranged screams echo in her memory, a frantic confession about ending a noble's life. Snapping back to the present, Ines wonders why this is coming up now. She tries to dismiss it, reminding herself that Lena was unstable and couldn't be trusted. A knock at the door breaks Ines's train of thought. Her maid, Susan, asks permission to enter. Once inside, Susan announces that a letter has arrived from none other than Sir Joseph. Ines is genuinely surprised to hear from him. She takes the elegant letter and begins to read as rain streaks down the windowpane. It's a birthday wish from Joseph, along with a request to meet her that very day. After a moment, she calls out for Susan, who responds immediately. Ines's mind is already racing, processing this unexpected invitation. Susan asks if there's something strange in the letter. Ines is furious. How dare a commoner knight like Joseph address her so casually by her first name? The disrespect triggers a horrifying memory. He didn't just frame her and send her to a terrible place. He was the one who ended her life after she escaped. In her final, agonizing moments, he stood over her in the rain and laughed. Clenching her fist, her resolve hardens into a single thought. To survive this time around, she has to eliminate him. Ines calmly tells her maid to accept Joseph's invitation. As soon as she's alone, her strategic mind kicks into high gear. She knows getting rid of Joseph is just the first step. A mere commoner knight couldn't have orchestrated her entire downfall on his own. There must be a powerful mastermind pulling the strings from the shadows. If she avoids Joseph, this true enemy will just find another pawn. Her fist clenches. To find peace, she must uncover this person's identity and make them pay for everything. As Ines sat by the window, she thought about what true peace would mean for her. A name instantly surfaced in her mind: Carson von Raymond. He was the man who had saved her from a grim end in her previous life, the one who pulled her out of that miserable existence. He had been her only salvation. Now, back in the present, she clasped her hands together. A newfound resolve settled over her. Just knowing that Carson was coming here was enough to bring her one step closer to her goal. In a stunning garden, Ines sits with perfect composure as Joseph arrives and bows before her. He puts a hand to his heart, earnestly declaring how much he missed her. Ines plays her part, returning his affection with a gentle smile and agreeing that she's glad to see him. Looking flustered with joy, Joseph tells her he's even written her a letter. But the moment his attention is elsewhere, Ines's sweet facade melts away. A cold, predatory smirk spreads across her face. The trap has been set, and her prey has walked right into it. Ines feigns curiosity, asking if he'll read the letter aloud. Eager to impress, Joseph agrees, wanting to express his feelings perfectly. He begins his poetic declaration, "To my beloved Ines." He reminisces about the day they met, describing her golden hair shining like moonlight and her breathtaking green eyes. As he concludes that he's loved her ever since that fateful day, Ines's face falls into shadow. His romantic words are poison to her ears. Joseph's recital ends. He takes a dramatic step forward and drops to one knee before her. He declares that he, the humble Joseph by Na-hwi, dares to propose. He opens a small box, presenting a sparkling ring. The same proposal, the same man who destroyed her. Ines can only stare down at him, a storm of cold fury brewing behind her calm mask. As Joseph waits for her answer with a hopeful smile, Ines looks away, her expression unreadable. Then, in one swift motion, she places her hand over his, firmly closing the ring box. She coolly tells him to get up. Completely bewildered, Joseph stammers, asking if she's rejecting his proposal. Ines denies it with an unnerving calm. She then explains that her actions are because she attended a meeting earlier that day, a statement that only deepens his confusion. Her game has just begun, and he has no idea what the rules are. Joseph echoes her words, completely lost. A meeting? Ines then casually reveals she received another marriage proposal from a family that actually matches her noble status. His hope plummets. But before he can despair, she sweetly reassures him, promising to decline the other offer. Joseph's face lights up, but his relief is short-lived. Ines adds that she needs time, reminding him that her own father doesn't approve of their relationship. She leaves him hanging, asking if he understands the difficult position she's in, leaving him utterly speechless. Joseph, still kneeling, desperately asks how long he has to wait. Ines vaguely suggests they wait until her father understands their love. She then dangles a new challenge before him, reminding him of his recent promotion. If he can achieve something bigger, like becoming a count, her father would surely approve. The impossible task makes Joseph falter. Ines presses her advantage, questioning if he expects her to marry a commoner. She finishes her masterful manipulation by telling him that if he truly wants her, he needs to put in the effort. He's been completely cornered. Ines understands she needs to push hard to make the real mastermind noticeable. She knows for a fact that Joseph is just a puppet on a string. In her past life, this unseen puppet master was powerful enough to elevate commoners, grant titles, pressure the Supreme Court, and even frame her for her own husband's demise. Lost in this dark memory of her past helplessness, a hand suddenly clamps down on her wrist. Just as she planned, her bold move has forced the true player out of the shadows. Joseph frantically denies her claims, but Ines calmly pulls away from his grasp. She then questions his love for her, and he stammers an affirmation. Playing her part, she agrees to postpone her other marriage meeting but warns that more proposals could come. Desperate to keep her, Joseph offers a ring, asking her to hold onto it as a promise. Ines accepts the token, but her thoughts are ice cold. She vows to herself that once everything is settled, this very ring will be the trophy marking her ultimate victory over him. With their meeting concluded, Ines decided to leave, giving the gardener's rounds as her excuse. She started to walk away, but then stopped dead in her tracks. Turning back to the still kneeling Joseph, she posed a chilling question, asking if he genuinely saw himself as insignificant. The sudden psychological jab caught him completely off guard. He silently stewed, questioning how she could say that to him. Utterly bewildered by her sharp turn, Joseph could only ask what she meant as Ines calmly walked away, leaving him frozen in confusion and brewing anger. With a faint, triumphant smile, Ines turned her back on him. She walked away, without a second glance, the sun casting her in a golden glow as Joseph was left kneeling in her shadow. Ines and her attendant, Josei, hurry through a stone shortcut. Josei mentions that Prince Carson is due to arrive at Razonia Square, wondering how Ines even knew about this secret path. Suddenly, Ines stops dead in her tracks. A grim memory flashes through her mind, a vision of people being forced into hard labor. When questioned, Ines vaguely explains that she saw the path once, a long time ago. Josei is stunned, unable to imagine Ines in such a place, but simply accepts the answer, admitting she's been full of surprises today. Suzanne expresses her surprise, pointing out how strange it is for Ines to want to see Prince Carson when she is engaged to Joseph. The attendant immediately gets flustered, insisting she didn't mean it in a scandalous way. Ines, however, understands her reaction is normal. A memory flashes of Joseph proposing just 3 days ago. His complete silence since then has put her on edge. Her hand clenches as she wonders what he's plotting. Shaking the thought away, she refocuses. Right now, meeting Carson is more important. She quietly wonders how old he is. As Ines wondered what he would look like, the grand procession of Prince Carson finally thundered into the square. At the head of the envoy, Carson sat tall, his golden eyes sharp and serious. He noted internally that the journey had taken longer than expected, but he was finally here to pick up Louis. His mind flashed back to a memory from when he was 15, a formal family portrait that held the key to his current mission. Carson's mind plunged into a dark memory from his youth. His mother had passed away, the victim of a slow, creeping poison. The entire royal family knew exactly who was responsible, a powerful, untouchable woman. Yet no one spoke a single word. They all stayed silent, paralyzed by fear or politics. Forced to watch, a young Carson could only seethe with a rage he couldn't unleash. The bitter truth of his powerlessness became a constant, suffocating weight, a feeling that would define him until the year he turned 17. Carson's mind raced back to the year he turned 17. He recalled Count Graham grabbing a terrified young Louis, ignoring her brother who had rushed over to stop him. The Count coldly remarked that he thought she was clever like Prince Carson. As tears streamed down the little girl's face, the Count raised his hand to discipline her. In a flash, her brother threw himself in front of her, taking the brunt of the impact. The sight of the young man shielding his sister became a defining, unforgettable moment for Carson. A young Carson stared down Count Graham, issuing a cold warning. He declared that if the Count laid even a single finger on Louis, he wouldn't let it go. The smug Count questioned this, reminding Carson that he himself had asked the Empress for this education. But Louis's brother, bruised but defiant, told the Count to shut his mouth. He urged the prince to leave with them, but Graham played his final card. He snarled, asking if they were truly planning to defy the will of the great Empress. Faced with the Empress's authority, Carson knew he was just a powerless kid. He knelt before little Louis, promising he would return for her soon. Her eyes, wide with a mix of fear and hope, pleaded with him to come quickly. He solemnly gave his word, but that was a promise he couldn't keep. After losing the only person he saw as a younger sibling, Carson became obsessed. He started gathering money by any means necessary, convinced that wealth was the one form of power that was clear, honest, and wouldn't betray him. Carson's obsession with money became his greatest weapon. Wealth solidified his once shaky position, forcing those who had looked down on him to kneel. Over the years, his earnings transformed into a massive fortune. By the time he was 21, Carson wielded unparalleled power, finally earning him an audience with the Empress herself. With a smirk, she made him an offer: the title of Lord of Land Hill. She coolly noted that the territory was conveniently close to Rizonia, hinting at a strategic move in her grand political game. The Empress found it interesting that he would give up the throne to hold onto money. Unfazed, Carson coolly replied that he didn't consider it a losing deal. Their eyes met in a silent clash of wills, the air thick with tension. With a smirk, the Empress sipped her wine, seemingly amused by his audacity. Carson sealed their deal, promising to speak well of her to the Emperor. Acknowledging his efforts, she dismissed him. As Carson turned to leave, his face was a mask of cold resolve, his newfound power radiating from him. Horse hooves pound against the dirt as Carson and his entourage finally approach Rizonia. His aide remarks that they've arrived early, cutting a 4-day trip short. A sharp smirk plays on Carson's lips. To him, this journey wasn't 4 days at all. It was 4 long, grueling years. 4 years spent amassing the power and wealth he needed for this exact moment. With a steely gaze, he readies himself. His long-awaited plan was finally in motion, and he was ready to make his move. As Ines and her maid walk through the city, she asks about the crowd gathered to see the prince. Her maid gushes that he's the most famous of them all. It's not just his incredible achievements, his stunningly handsome face has made him a massive celebrity. The maid adds that nearly every noble lady owns his portrait. A sly smirk touches Ines's lips as she tells her shocked maid to get her one, too. After all, if everyone has one, she wants one as well. Amused, the maid agrees, teasing Ines about her sudden interest. As Lena dismisses the situation as nonsense, a strange noise makes Ines freeze in her tracks. Suddenly, a cloaked figure blocks their path, triggering a horrifying vision from Ines's past life. She sees a frantic, desperate Lena, manipulated by a promise to save someone named Jason if she took out that girl. The shocking memory hits Ines like a physical blow. Her so-called friend had been coerced into becoming her attacker. Ines stares in stunned silence, the full weight of the past betrayal crashing down on her. The vision intensifies, showing Lena in a dark alley with a sinister cloaked figure. The man assures her this is the final time, but Lena looks terrified, questioning his promise. Back in the present, Ines is paralyzed by the memory. Her maid, sensing the danger, urgently whispers for them to go. Ines numbly agrees, her mind a whirlwind of questions. Why was Lena in a place like that? And who is the shadowy man pulling the strings? Still reeling from the revelation, Ines allows her maid to lead her away from the scene. Walking through the festive streets, Ines is haunted by the past. A horrifying memory surfaces. Lena once admitted she was responsible for the fate of a royal girl in Rizonia. The implication hits Ines like a ton of bricks. If that confession was true, it means a tragedy is about to repeat itself. Her mind races, connecting the dots with chilling certainty. The royal girl Lena mentioned could only be the princess, and that princess is Carson's sister. A terrible event is on the horizon. The chilling realization solidifies in Ines's mind. The day Carson returns home with his sister is the exact day Lena plans to end the princess's life. A wave of pure panic washes over her. She has to warn someone, anyone, but a crippling doubt follows. Who would believe her fantastic story? They'd call her crazy, dismiss her as a madwoman. The fear of messing everything up again is overwhelming. Shaking off her hesitation, Ines excuses herself from her companion and strides forward with newfound purpose, catching a young noble girl by surprise. The young girl has black hair and stunning golden eyes, a spitting image of Carson. Ines's blood runs cold. This is the princess. Her maid tries to hurry them along, but Ines is paralyzed by the terrible truth. This is Carson's sister. A wave of pure adrenaline hits her. She lunges through the crowd, desperately calling for the girl to wait. But it's too late. The festival goers suddenly surge forward, forming an impassable barrier. Ines can only watch in horror as the princess is swallowed by the crowd, completely out of reach. Ines desperately tries to shove through the wall of people, begging them to let her pass. But a royal guard grabs her arm, stopping her cold. He firmly states that the procession has started, and she can go no further. Just then, the clatter of hooves echoes down the street as a parade of knights and carriages advances. Leading the procession on a magnificent dark horse is Carson. Ines's heart plummets. She's trapped. With Lena's attack imminent, she can only watch in horror, completely helpless to warn them. The procession suddenly halts as a lone figure on a dark horse charges straight through the crowd, heading directly for the royal family. Onlookers murmur in shock, wondering who would be so reckless. A royal guard sprints forward, yelling at the rider to get down or be taken down by force. The hooded figure ignores him completely. As she closes in on the young princess, she savagely yanks the reins. The massive horse rears up violently, its hooves poised to crash down on the terrified girl and her maid. The hood falls back, revealing the attacker's face. It's Lena, her expression twisted with rage. As Ines watches, a terrifying realization dawns on her. Lena isn't just targeting the princess, she's charging straight for the empress. The young princess, completely unaware of the danger, calls out for her brother. That's the last straw for Ines. She shoves the guard aside, deciding she can't just stand by. With newfound resolve, she sprints towards the royal family, determined to intervene even if it means changing the future she knows. With Lena's horse rearing up, one thought screams through Ines's mind. She has to protect the empress. In a desperate, selfless act, she sprints forward and shoves the royal out of the path of danger. Ines takes the full, devastating impact of the attack herself. A shocking splash of red erupts across the cobblestones, silencing the horrified crowd. As the chaos settles, nothing is left where she stood but a single, scarlet ribbon, drifting slowly to the ground. The entire plaza is frozen in stunned disbelief. Ines hits the ground hard, a gash blooming on her forehead. Lying on the cold stone, she groans in pain. Above her, the young princess she just saved stares down, her eyes wide with shock and concern, asking if Ines is all right. Despite the throbbing in her head, Ines manages a weak smile. She reassures the terrified girl that it's okay and she shouldn't worry. But the danger isn't over. The enraged horse rears up again, its massive hooves poised to crash down on them both. As guards finally restrain the attacker, Lena thrashes wildly, screaming for them to let her go. She fumes that if it wasn't for that meddling woman, her dark plan would have succeeded. Ignoring the chaos, Ines pulls the terrified princess close, whispering reassurances that everything is okay now. She tries to lead the little girl away, promising to take her to the prince. But the adrenaline wears off, and a wave of dizziness hits her hard. The world blurs and tilts as the last of her strength finally fades, and everything goes dark. As Ines fades, she feels herself sinking into a watery abyss, her consciousness slipping away. A promise to return empty-handed echoes in her mind. But before she's completely lost, a strong hand grabs her wrist, pulling her back to reality. Her body is caught just before it hits the ground. A worried voice cuts through the haze as Carson asks if she's okay. Her eyes flutter open, blood trickling down her forehead. She weakly whispers his name, her last thought being for the girl she saved, muttering about the princess before finally succumbing to darkness. Carson rushes through the palace, his heavy footsteps echoing down the grand staircase. He can't believe this all happened the moment he was away. A cold dread washes over him as he processes the close call. He thinks back to the terrifying scene, realizing with chilling certainty that the situation could have been a whole lot worse. If it wasn't for that brave lady stepping in, the young Princess Louis would have met a terrible fate. His gratitude mixes with a surge of worry for the woman who saved the day. Suddenly, chaos erupts as a horse rears back, its massive form threatening to crush Princess Louis. Ines dives without hesitation, shielding the young girl with her own body. Watching from a distance, Carson screams Louis's name in absolute horror. He lunges forward to help, but a squad of mysterious hooded figures materializes, cutting off his path. Joseph furiously commands them to get out of the way, but their leader coldly states they cannot. They are only following orders, revealing this was no accident, but a carefully laid trap. Carson's jaw tightens as a curse escapes his lips. He lunges at the hooded figure blocking his way, fury clouding his golden eyes. He'd expected the Empress to make things difficult, but he never imagined she would stoop so low. The sheer nerve to even touch Louis. His sword flashes from its sheath, driven by pure protective rage. His only thought is getting to the young princess. But as he moves to strike, his mind flashes to a sunny day, remembering himself asking a woman if she was all right. However, his present reality was a nightmare. As the dust settles, Carson's gaze locks onto the woman standing with Louis. A nasty gash marks her forehead, but her expression is serene. He can't look away, a single question echoing in his mind. Who is she? He's positive he's never seen her before, yet there's an undeniable pull, a strange sense of familiarity he can't explain. She looks pale and unsteady, as if she could faint at any moment. Seeing her feels like a memory he can't quite grasp, an impossible connection that stops him dead in his tracks. Carson was completely captivated. To him, this mysterious woman seemed absolutely perfect. Later, he quietly opens the door to her room. Ines is unconscious in bed, her face patched up from her injuries. He stands there just watching her, his mind racing. A confusing thought hits him. Seeing her up close again, she definitely looks younger. Again, the word hangs in his mind. He can't shake the image of her injured face from the incident, a face that feels impossibly familiar, yet is a complete mystery. As he wrestled with the question, her eyes slowly fluttered open. She was waking up. He leaned in, his voice soft but urgent, and asked if she had regained consciousness. Their eyes finally met. Carson's voice cut through the haze as he asked if she was finally coming to her senses. Ines's eyes fluttered open, her mind foggy. Recognizing him instantly, she whispered his name and asked where she was. He calmly explained they were in his castle. He had rushed her there after she fainted. Ines was stunned. She clutched the sheets, her knuckles white. She had been so sure she was about to die. Then it hit her. Carson had saved her again. The thought triggered a blurry, watery memory of a strange vision she saw right before blacking out. The hazy vision was real. Ines's first concern wasn't for herself, but for the child. She weakly asked Carson if the little princess was all right. He reassured her that the girl was sleeping soundly, all thanks to her selfless act. Feeling a wave of relief, Ines decided it was time to go and tried to get out of bed. But her body immediately gave out. She wobbled, and Carson instantly rushed to her side, catching her before she could fall. He held her steady, firmly telling her she lost too much blood and needed to rest. Defeated, Ines settled back into the bed. Carson's concern then shifted to her bandaged ankle. He explained that it was probably hurting a lot right now, but assured her she'd be able to walk just fine after a few days of rest. But Ines felt a strange discomfort hanging in the air. She reached out to get his attention, her voice low but serious. She asked him what had happened to the woman who was chasing them. The question made Carson flinch, his whole demeanor hardening in an instant. Carson confirmed her suspicions, explaining that since the woman's identity was unclear, she was currently being detained. A jolt went through Ines. She knew exactly who it was, Lena. Her mind flashed back to the woman's frantic screams, revealing that Count Graham of Lazonia was the one who promised her everything. The horrifying truth clicked into place. This wasn't a random attack, it was a plot against the royal family. Ines realized this was a golden opportunity. If she could expose the Count's treason, it would be a massive win for both her and Carson. Ines made a bold request, asking if she could meet the woman who attacked them. Carson's eyes narrowed, immediately questioning her strange motive. Playing it cool, Ines claimed the woman looked familiar and that she needed to see her face to face, just to be sure. She even tried backtracking, suggesting she might be mistaken. Carson was internally on high alert. Wanting to meet your own attacker was highly suspicious. Despite his doubts, a disarming smile spread across his face as he calmly agreed to grant the young lady's wish. Carson told her they would think about the visit later and turned to leave. He paused at the door, a thoughtful look on his face. Turning back with a disarming smile, he added that he had already explained the entire situation to Baron Swendon. He assured Ines that she didn't have to worry about a thing and was welcome to stay until she had fully recovered. As the door clicked shut, Ines was left alone, realizing this wasn't just about her. Carson was making a strategic move, and it involved her father. As Ines stood alone, a chilling thought hit her. Was she now trapped, just like Lena? 1 week later, Carson sat in his study, buried in paperwork and simmering with frustration. He wondered why the captured woman still hadn't confessed. All they got from Lena were frantic screams from her cell, claiming she was out of her mind and couldn't remember anything. To make matters worse, an aide reported that the other attackers involved in the incident were completely unidentifiable. It was a frustrating dead end, and Carson's patience was wearing thin. Carson sighed, deeply frustrated. Nothing about this case was adding up. His thoughts shifted to the woman under his roof, Ines Swendon. He remembered first identifying her as just the Baron's daughter, an ordinary, unremarkable young lady. But her recent actions painted a totally different picture. She had an extraordinary ability to save people and a shocking indifference to her own pain. Carson was forced to wonder if these were really the traits of a simple noblewoman. The woman in his care was anything but ordinary. Carson continued to ponder the enigma that was Ines. Could a normal noble lady really act the way she did? A sudden knock on his study door broke his concentration. An aide announced that Lady Swendon herself had come to see him. Speak of the devil. Intrigued, Carson ordered the aide to let her in. As he waited, her name echoed in his mind. He couldn't shake the strange, unsettling feeling she gave him. The door opened, and Ines stepped inside, her expression perfectly composed as she walked toward him. As Ines entered, Carson watched her with a sharp, analytical gaze. He noticed her face was still swollen, and her feet were heavily bandaged beneath her dress. Her wounds couldn't have healed this fast, so how was she walking so perfectly? A sudden realization struck him. The discomfort he felt whenever she was near finally made sense. There was a bizarre disconnect about her. It was as if her determined spirit and her injured body were two separate entities, moving together, but not truly in sync. She was an enigma. Carson gestured for Ines to take a seat, the tension hanging heavy in the air. Once they were settled, he immediately asked about her ankle. Ines coolly dismissed his concern, insisting it was nothing serious. But beneath the table, her heavily bandaged feet told a completely different story. Seeing this, Carson pressed her again, his sharp gaze searching her face, asking if she was truly all right. Maintaining her perfect composure, Ines simply thanked him for his consideration, confirming she was fine. But his suspicion was clearly growing. Ines coolly stated that it was a relief and asked to return home, claiming to be fully recovered. Carson watched her intently, his tone laced with doubt as he remarked on her seemingly miraculous recovery. Ines simply agreed, but her mind was already elsewhere. A crucial detail suddenly clicked into place. He hadn't mentioned Lena, not even once. In that moment, she realized she couldn't just leave. There were more questions that needed answers, and she wasn't going anywhere until she got them. Her mission was far from over. Just as Ines prepared to depart, Carson stopped her, setting his teacup down with a soft click. He declared that before she went, He needed to properly thank her. With a look of genuine sincerity, he expressed his gratitude for saving his only sibling, apologizing for the delay due to unresolved matters. A little flustered, Ines brushed it off, stating she only did what was natural. She then coolly reminded him that the Empire is obligated to reward anyone who saves a member of the royal family, shifting the focus from personal to official. He slid a long document towards her, telling her to read it through and choose the reward she needed most. But Ines didn't even need a moment to think. Without looking at the list, she confidently stated that she had already decided. With unwavering resolve, she made her request. She wanted to receive immunity from prosecution, a privilege that would exempt her from any criminal liability. Carson was stunned. Instead of asking for land or jewels, she chose something so unusual. An intrigued smirk crept onto his face. This woman was far more interesting than he'd imagined. Carson's smirk widened. This woman was definitely not ordinary. He leaned forward, asking what crime she was planning that required such a reward. He reasoned that a noble woman would have little use for immunity and offered her more time to decide. But Ines was unshakable, insisting that this was all she wanted. Intrigued, Carson pressed her for a reason. Her response was chillingly direct. With a steady gaze, she admitted that maybe, just maybe, she might end up taking someone's life. The amusement vanished from Carson's face, replaced by a cold, hard stare. A small laugh escaped Carson. He admitted her answer was completely unexpected. His gaze fell to her small hands resting on the table as he questioned what she could possibly be planning. Ines's fingers twitched slightly on the document. She calmly replied that it wasn't about a specific plan, but a simple acknowledgement that life is unpredictable. Carson agreed, but his amusement vanished. He warned her that immunity had its limits. It wouldn't completely save her from the consequences of a major crime. His stark words hung in the air between them. Ines acknowledged his warning, but her real fear surfaced. A grim vision of a fortress flashed through her mind as she confessed that she just couldn't end up in Romfield. The name caught Carson's attention, and he asked if she meant the infamous prison. Ines visibly shuddered, calling it an unbearable place before quickly claiming she only heard rumors. Getting to the point, she laid out her exact terms: immunity that promised she would never be sent to Romfield, and a guarantee that her family would remain safe, no matter what she did. With a sharp nod, Carson finally agreed to her terms. He ordered his aide, Noah, to draft the document exactly as she wished. But Ines wasn't done yet. Now that he was the Lord of Landhill, she had another matter to discuss concerning her family. She explained that her Swendon family had been transferred to his territory, but they were still technically working under the Lasonia domain. This messy arrangement needed to be sorted out. A surprised Carson turned to Noah, who explained it was a strange but existing loophole due to territory imbalances. Carson confirmed her concerns. The Lord of Lasonia was indeed making unreasonable demands. He admitted it wasn't a pleasant situation to have a family from his own domain serving another lord. He warned her that since the matter required imperial approval, it would take some time to resolve officially. But he could give her a solid promise right now. He declared that before the end of the year, Lasonia would completely stop interfering with her Swendon family. Relief washed over Ines's face as she offered him a heartfelt thank you. With a faint smirk, Carson brought up one last unresolved issue. He calmly asked about that other matter, catching Ines completely off guard. She hesitated, confused about what he could possibly mean. Suddenly, a dark and terrifying memory flashed through her mind, an image of a person locked away behind cold bars. The vision was suffocating, a chilling reminder of the woman kept hidden in the basement. The raw horror of that memory contorted Ines's face as she remembered the dreadful secret they shared. Carson pressed her about their other unresolved issue. Ines played dumb, asking which one he meant. He clarified, referring to the person being kept in the underground. A chilling vision instantly flooded her mind, a lone figure trapped behind cold iron bars. The memory of that woman made Ines's face twist in pure horror. Carson noted her extreme reaction, recalling that she had wanted to meet this person. He asked directly if she truly knew who the captive was. Composing herself, Ines declared she would tell him everything after they finally met. Carson rose from his seat, deciding they should trust each other. He then called for his advisor, Noah, to escort her. Startled, Ines quickly tried to refuse the high-ranking escort. She insisted she didn't want to impose on him, suggesting a regular attendant would be fine. But Carson was firm, stating it was only natural for a benefactor. He ordered Noah to guide the young lady. Noah led the way, and Ines followed with a quiet thank you. Just as she was about to leave, Carson called out her name. He had one last question. Ines turned back, and Carson hit her with his final question. With a serious look, he asked if they had ever met before. His advisor, Noah, was totally thrown off, thinking his master was dropping a cheesy pickup line. But Ines didn't even blink. A tiny, confident smirk played on her lips as she coolly denied it, saying she didn't think so. With the unexpected question answered, Noah gestured down a dark stone corridor, showing her the way to the underground cell. Noah led Ines down the stone corridor to a guarded cell, inviting her to go in. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a dim room and a lone, kneeling figure. It was Lena Marielle. As Lena looked up, recognition twisted into rage. She shot to her feet, screaming accusations at Ines. She shrieked that Ines was the one who interfered in the square, ruining everything and making it all her fault. Unmoved by the outburst, Noah calmly ordered the guards to step in and bind the woman. With Lena now restrained by the guards, Ines calmly laid out the facts. She told the prisoner that staying silent wouldn't change the inevitable outcome. A grim sentence awaited her. Lena just laughed, sarcastically asking if her fate would be so simple. Ines cut through the defiance, questioning if Lena truly believed her backers could save her. "Shut your mouth," Lena shrieked, her composure finally breaking. Unfazed, Ines called her a fool and delivered a chilling promise. She would personally handle Lena long before any courtroom got the chance, leaving Noah completely stunned by her ruthlessness. The confrontation finally took its toll. As Ines turned from the cell, she staggered back, spitting on the stone floor as a lone tear escaped. Noah, startled by her sudden vulnerability, rushed to her side and asked if she was all right. Ines snapped back to her calm self in an instant, assuring him she was fine. She then cleverly sent him on an errand, asking him to retrieve a forgotten handkerchief from her room. Believing her, Noah agreed and walked off, leaving Ines with the corridor all to herself. The heavy cell door creaked open as Ines re-entered, her gaze locking onto the prisoner. She leaned in, calmly telling Lena she knew exactly who gave her the orders. Before Lena could react, Ines delivered a crushing blow. The Lord of Lazonia would abandon her. Lena frantically denied it, but Ines laid out the cold logic. She asked if Lena truly believed Count Graham would protect a failed pawn who could expose all his secrets. As Lena stammered that it was impossible, Ines watched her composure shatter, her cruel words hitting their mark. Ines switched tactics, dropping a single, powerful name, Jason. Lena's eyes shot open in pure shock. Ines leaned in, calmly stating that Jason was going to die very soon. As Lena scrambled backwards in denial, Ines explained that while she didn't know him, she knew he was important. She recalled how Lena completely unraveled after his death in the past. To drive the final nail in the coffin, Ines revealed that Count Graham himself would be responsible. Utterly shattered, Lena weakly demanded to know who Ines was to possess such knowledge. Lena finally snaps, screaming for Ines to shut her mouth as she lunges forward. But she stumbles, collapsing onto the cold stone floor with a loud thud. The commotion alerts Carson and Joseph, who rush in to see the scene. Ines coolly explains that Lena had suddenly become aggressive and threw herself at her. As the defeated woman denies it from the ground, Carson orders Joseph to get her up. He roughly pulls the broken maid to her feet. Through it all, a cold, calculating smirk plays on Ines's lips. Her plan had worked perfectly. As Ines's horrifying words about Jason echoed in her mind, Lena finally snapped, screaming for her to shut up. But Ines remained stone cold. She stepped forward, ignoring the others in the cell, and declared that Lena was the one who needed to be quiet. Grabbing the terrified maid's chin, she forced her to look up. With a chilling intensity, Ines whispered that she would now reveal the true nature of Romfield. Lena's eyes widened in pure, unadulterated terror as she was completely at Ines's mercy. Leaning in, Ines whispered the grim truth about Romfield. It was a place of endless agony. She told Lena her body would be systematically broken, piece by painful piece. She'd be served food so rotten, she'd be lucky to swallow it before it came back up. Ines painted a terrifying picture of being at the mercy of strangers, forced into complete silence, no matter what they did to her. The horrifying details shattered Lena's mind, and she let out a desperate, guttural scream, begging Ines to shut her mouth. On her knees, utterly defeated, Lena screamed that Ines was completely insane. But her words had no effect. Ines simply let out a soft, chilling laugh. Internally, she admitted Lena had a point. Ever since returning to the past, she'd been driven by a rage so intense it felt like madness. Leaning down, she whispered into the terrified maid's ear. She told her not to worry. Soon enough, Lena would be just as insane as she was. The final, horrifying promise completely shattered Lena's mind. A guard presents Ines with the handkerchief she requested. She accepts it with a polite smile, but Joseph, watching from a distance, is visibly disturbed by her cold composure. A young noble girl, Louis, also looks on, completely baffled by the scene. Ines then orders another knight to put the broken Lena onto a chair. Standing over the defeated maid, she tells her to face reality. Ines makes it clear. Lena now has a choice to make, and her decision will be based on the terrifying future Ines just laid out for her. Ines coldly tells the terrified maid that the grim future she just described isn't a threat, it's a promise. But she offers Lena one path to survival. She must go to Prince Carson, confess everything, and beg for mercy. Ines makes it clear this is the only way to save not only her own life, but also the lives of everyone she cares about. Having delivered his part of the message, Noah bows and quietly excuses himself. Ines simply watches him leave, her chilling ultimatum hanging heavy in the air. Meanwhile, in a grand office, a sharp knock echoes. From behind his desk, Prince Carson grants permission to enter. Noah steps inside, his usual composure completely gone. He's visibly shaken, struggling to figure out how to even begin explaining the chaotic scene he just left behind. Carson, sensing the heavy tension, calmly encourages him to speak. When Noah can only clear his throat nervously, Carson finally looks up from his documents, his piercing gaze demanding to know what's wrong. Finally gathering himself, Noah reports that Lady Ines has left. And the bombshell? Lena Merriere is ready to confess everything. Carson is floored. He'd been trying to get Lena to talk for a week with absolutely no success. The prince can't figure out how Ines managed to intercept Lena before his own security could. As Carson puzzles over her impossible timing, a shadowy figure with intense purple eyes holds a stack of sealed letters, their own plans silently unfolding in the background. Carson grapples with the immense pressure of the situation. He was just about to hand Lena over to the Empress's security, getting nothing in return. But then Ines showed up, and suddenly Lena was ready to talk. The prince is completely stumped. How did Ines know how to use Louis's situation to break Lena? He questions if this is all just a wild coincidence. Tapping his desk, Carson demands to know what Ines said to her. A nervous Noah can only admit that while Ines said many things, he doesn't know the details. Noah admits he only caught one specific detail. When Carson presses him, Noah reveals the key word, Romfield. Carson is stumped. Noah explains that Ines threatened Lena with being sent there, a tactic he himself has used many times without success. But for some reason, hearing it from Ines was different. Lena completely broke down, desperately pleading for immunity from Romfield and for her family's safety. The sheer terror in her voice leaves Carson reeling, wondering what unspeakable things could have happened to her in that place to cause such a reaction. Frustrated by the lack of answers, Carson shoots up from his desk. He declares he's done playing games and needs to meet Ines himself to understand what's going on. But as he turns to leave, Noah stops him with one final, baffling piece of news. He reveals that Princess Louis personally came to see Ines off at her carriage. Carson freezes, completely blindsided by the information. The young princess's involvement adds a shocking new layer to Ines's impossibly intricate plans, leaving the prince more confused than ever about who she truly is. Carson presses Noah for details on the meeting between Ines and the elusive princess. Noah insists there was barely any conversation. They just shared a brief hug and Ines left. The prince is in disbelief, asking if that makes any sense. Noah swears he's telling the truth. Running a hand through his hair in total frustration, Carson realizes Ines has completely blindsided him again. This woman keeps creating impossible situations. He decides he needs to change his plan. First, he'll meet with Lena to get some real answers. The door clicks open as Carson steps into the dark, damp room. He finds Lena Marielle huddled on the floor, looking completely broken. He calls her name, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Lena flinches, her eyes widening in terror as she recognizes the prince. Scrambling to her feet, she immediately starts begging, promising to reveal the mastermind behind everything. She collapses to her knees, pleading desperately for him to spare someone named Jason. Confused, Carson asks who she's talking about. Through her tears, Lena confesses that Jason is her 3-year-old son. Lena frantically promises to testify to everything if Carson will just save her child. Unfazed, Carson asks if she is certain. Lena blurts out that Count Graham has captured her son, and there isn't much time left. A dark smile flashes across Carson's face. He'd suspected one of the Empress's allies was involved, and Graham's mistake has finally given him the lead he needs. With the final puzzle piece in place, he turns back to the desperate mother. He agrees to her deal and promises to save her son. Carson cuts straight to the point, asking Lena if she knows where her son is being held. She tearfully admits she doesn't know the exact location, only that he's hidden. When pressed for a description, she says her son has brown hair, blue eyes, and a small scar under his left ear. Wasting no time, Carson orders Noah to discreetly inform the knights. With the search underway, he turns his cold gaze back to the terrified mother. He tells her he has one more question, and she nervously asks what it is. Carson leans in, his gaze sharp as he asks his final question. Lena shakily reveals the person who hired her was the woman he met earlier that day, identifying her as Ines Swindon. The scene then cuts to Joseph being questioned separately. He insists he only just met Ines, but adds that she acted like she already knew him. This peculiar detail confirms a suspicion in Carson's mind. Realizing Ines is playing a much deeper game, he tells the desperate mother to wait there until they find her child. With his promise made, Carson turns to leave. He quietly says Lena's full name, then immediately orders Noah to forget he ever said it. As they walk away, Carson lays out a cold, calculated plan. He instructs Noah to start a rumor that Lena Marielle set her own room on fire and tragically ended her own life. To complete the deception, there will be no official statements, and security will be ordered not to release her body until the investigation is declared over. Without hesitation, Noah confirms he understands the grim task ahead. To make the deception complete, Carson gives one final, chilling order. He tells Noah to find a suitable body for the fire, one that is completely unidentifiable. 4 days later, his plan proves successful. Noah reports that they've located Lena's child. Just as Carson predicted, the rumor of Lena's demise panicked one of Count Graham's men, who then led them right to the boy. With the child safe, Noah now asks what Carson plans to do with the very much alive Lena Marielle. Carson decides he'll keep Lena hidden for now, but acknowledges that her crimes against royalty mean she'll eventually face punishment. However, a strange thought crosses his mind. He feels he should get Lady Ines's approval first. Putting it aside, he orders Noah to reunite Lena with her child. Carson is certain that with her son safe, she will testify on his behalf. When Noah asks why Count Graham is targeting him, Carson speculates it's because the Count views him as a threat, hinting at a much larger power struggle at play. Carson puts the pieces together. Count Graham isn't working alone. The Empress is backing him. He knows he lacks the evidence to challenge her directly and predicts she'll keep trying to get rid of him. For now, he decides to wait and prepare. Running a hand through his hair, he knows things are about to get complicated. Noah then asks about an upcoming banquet. Carson confirms it's in a month, and a thought strikes him. Ines will be there. An image of her looking wounded flashes in his mind as he muses on what a peculiar woman she is. Lost in thought, Carson reflects on the puzzle that is Ines. He sees her as a walking contradiction, a noble woman willing to risk it all for a child, yet with a fierce intensity that could stop a man's heart. He decides she is a truly unusual woman. Snapping back to reality, he calls for Noah and asks if sending Ines a dress for the banquet would be an appropriate gift. Noah questions the gesture, but Carson simply confirms it, ordering him to also prepare jewels and a matching necklace to complete the set. As Noah turns to leave, Carson suddenly stops him with one final instruction: make the gifts green. Confused, Noah asks for clarification. Carson explains that the dress and jewels should be green, but not too dark of a shade. A bit surprised by the detailed request, Noah agrees and heads out, thinking his master is far more meticulous than he appears. Left alone, Carson wonders about his own command. He can't explain it, but whenever he pictures Ines, he sees her in a beautiful green dress, sitting peacefully by the water. A month later, on the night of the grand banquet, Carson and Noah stride through the palace halls. Noah reports that the Empress has surprisingly resolved a complex territorial issue, returning land to its rightful owners far quicker than expected. Giving his master a suspicious look, Noah asks if he might have threatened someone to get such a fast result. Carson coolly denies it. He simply let it be known that he had received the gifts that were sent to the public square, a subtle but powerful reminder that he holds all the evidence he needs. Carson allows himself a small smirk. His plan worked flawlessly. By publicly acknowledging the gifts, he's backed the Empress into a corner. She had no choice but to approve the territory deal to save face. He knows she'll strike again, but that's fine. He's been preparing for this fight his entire life. Noah, overhearing him, starts to ask about the other gift. Carson cuts him off, coolly stating that it doesn't matter now. For now, they just need to get through his welcome party. He stands, ready to make his entrance. The welcome banquet is in full swing, music filling the lavish hall as nobles mingle under sparkling chandeliers. Nearby, Count Graham discusses the exciting news with a lady. He mentions that a young prince is coming to Land Hill and that he's looking forward to the future. The lady agrees, but her smile fades as she turns to Ines. Noticing her pale expression, she asks if she's okay, pointing out that she doesn't look well. Lost in her thoughts, Ines seems completely detached from the celebration around her. Ines internally admits that she's feeling nervous, and for good reason. Her mind flashes back to a letter she received from her future husband and tormentor, Joseph Benoit. Before her regression, he had written to ask for her response to his marriage proposal. He specifically mentioned he would be at this very banquet to get his answer. The horrifying realization hits her. The man who will one day destroy her life is about to appear, and he's here to corner her. A cold shock jolts through her body, making her flinch. Ines's mind flashes back to Joseph's letter. That strange mention of a commoner-themed banquet, it was a trap. He planned to corner her here all along, and she saw no way out. As nearby nobles gossip about Carson's party, the sharp click of footsteps cuts through the air.
Ines freezes.
There he is, weaving through the crowd with purpose. Joseph Benoit, her future nightmare, looking every bit the charming knight. Back then, he was just another lord's guard, but his predatory gaze was locked right on her. The hunt had begun. Count Graham and his wife approach Count Raymond, with the lady praising the excellent banquet. He dismisses the compliment, saying it was nothing. She then mentions bringing her daughter, suggesting he dance with her later. The friendly offer falls flat, and a tense silence hangs in the air. Count Graham tries to smooth things over, pleading with Raymond not to be so harsh and reminding him that he cared for Louis like family. But the reminder only seems to stoke a hidden anger, and Count Raymond clenches his jaw in quiet rage. Count Raymond's face twists in quiet fury, repeating Graham's words with contempt. He coldly asks if this is how the Earl treats his own family. A confused Graham asks what he means. Raymond doesn't hold back. He reminds the Earl that he took in a sister, the princess of the Empire, yet sent her out with only a single maid. With a dangerous glint in his eyes, Raymond accuses Graham of practically wanting something terrible to happen to her. The chilling accusation hangs heavy in the air, leaving the Earl sweating under the crushing weight of his gaze. Count Raymond's voice turns to ice. He reveals he stayed silent before because Louis was in danger, but he declares that time is over. A chilling pressure radiates from him, silencing the room. While other nobles whisper about the sudden tension, a man named Viscount Swendon approaches Carson to pay his respects. Unfazed by the drama, Carson greets him with a disarming smile and a handshake. He warmly states he's wanted to meet the Viscount, leaving a terrified Earl Graham to sweat under the weight of his own failure. Viscount Swendon awkwardly thanks Carson, apologizing for not visiting sooner to express his gratitude. His companion quickly shifts her attention to Ines, thanking her profusely for the precious gifts and for resolving a major issue. Surprised, Ines turns to Carson and asks if he personally selected the dress and necklace. He confirms it, stating that a gift for his benefactor was too important to leave to others. With a soft look, he adds that he thought the green gems would complement her perfectly, leaving Ines speechless. Ines melts into Carson's warm embrace, her cheeks flushing at his closeness. As Viscount Swendon stammers out his gratitude, the air suddenly goes cold. Carson turns his sharp gaze upon both the Viscount and the terrified Earl Graham, announcing he has something to say. With a smirk that doesn't reach his eyes, Carson declares that since everyone is already gathered, it's the perfect time to have a little chat. A nervous Viscount Swendon asks what he could possibly want to discuss. Without missing a beat, Carson drops a bombshell. From this moment on, the Stanton family will be formally affiliated with Land Hill. The announcement sends a shockwave through the room. Earl Graham and the Viscount are completely floored by the sudden declaration, as the crowd realizes that Carson has just absorbed their territory right in front of everyone. Earl Graham sputters, trying to argue that the Stanton family has always supported Rosonia. Carson takes a menacing step forward, cutting him off with a chilling question. Is the Count defying the royal family? Terrified, Graham tries to fall back on a special law, but Carson isn't having it. He calmly reveals that the Empress herself permitted this takeover. Placing a hand on the Count's shoulder, Carson dares him to go to the palace if he has doubts, warning him that a Count has no place interfering in royal family business. Defeated, Earl Graham clenches his lapel and grits his teeth. He forces himself to announce that as the Lord, he will set things straight. From this moment on, Stanton will only support Land Hill. With the matter settled, Carson turns his back on the fuming Earl, coldly telling him he may go. He rubs salt in the wound by adding that he needs to greet the people of his territory now. As the humiliated Earl walks away, Joseph glances back at Ines, saying he'll be leaving too. She simply watches him go, her expression unreadable. After his public power move, Carson slumps onto a couch, sighing that he's already exhausted. His aide, Noah, points out that he's only been greeting people and asks if his duties are over. Carson grimaces, explaining the night isn't finished yet. He still has to dance for the second part. He groans, calling it the absolute worst and asking if he can skip it. Holding up a schedule, Noah firmly crushes his hopes, stating that skipping the dance is simply not an option tonight. Noah presents Carson with a list, but the Lord groans upon seeing it. He demands to know what it is, and Noah cheerfully explains it's filled with the names of young ladies. Irritated, Carson asks if he's expected to pick a bride on his first day. Noah clarifies it's just a list of potential dance partners. Carson's response is a blunt no. When a confused Noah asks if he's rejecting marriage entirely, Carson sighs. He clarifies that he just doesn't want to dance, telling his aide not to be so harsh. Noah tries to sell the list, explaining it's filled with high-ranking noble ladies from Landhill. He points out they've all been vetted for social standing, reputation, and wealth. With a hopeful smile, he asks if this changes Carson's mind about dancing. Carson just lets out a heavy sigh, dryly calling his aide a truly competent assistant. Taking it as a real compliment, Noah beams. Annoyed, Carson asks to be left alone. Noah agrees, but reminds him to look at the list before he leaves, closing the door behind him. Needing a moment alone, Carson grabs the list of ladies and steps out onto a balcony. He takes a deep breath, reflecting on his new title. He mused that playing a lord all day felt strange, but it was far better than the empty position of a prince he once endured. His gaze dropped to the list in his hand as he considered the prospect of marriage. For an unmarried lord, he knew it was simply inevitable. This was just another duty he couldn't escape. Carson scanned the list of ladies, a frown forming on his face. He wondered why Ines's name was missing from the pages. Just then, the sound of footsteps from the garden below caught his attention. He looked over the balcony railing and spotted a woman walking alone in the moonlight. As she stepped into a clearing, he realized who it was. Ines. A wave of concern washed over him as he watched her disappear into the trees, questioning where she could possibly be going alone at this hour. Ines ventures deeper into the woods until she reaches a secluded clearing. Glancing around, she confirms they're finally alone and announces they can speak comfortably here. She turns, and a man steps out from the shadows. It's Joseph, her ex-husband and the man who took everything from her. He greets her with a disarmingly sweet smile, calling her name. Ines stares back, her expression unreadable as she says his name in return. The first move in her game of revenge is about to be made. Joseph steps forward, asking how she knew he was following. Ines calmly replies that his perfume was quite strong. She adds that she tried to dress up, and it seems to have worked. He smiles, telling her that from the moment he saw her at the banquet, he felt something. He leans in close, calling her truly beautiful that night. Without another word, he suddenly pulls her into a tight, inescapable embrace. Ines freezes in his arms, her expression hidden as darkness seems to close in around them, her plan now in motion. As he pulls her into a tight embrace, Joseph declares how much he wanted to hold her. Trapped in his arms, Ines's eyes fly open in silent horror. The touch of her murderer feels absolutely filthy. He whispers, asking if she missed him. With a forceful shove, she pushes him away, breaking his grip. Ines puts on a panicked act, telling him not to do this where someone might see them. Joseph apologizes, slightly flustered, before smiling and announcing that he actually has some good news for her. Ines asks what the good news is. With a hand on his chest, Joseph proudly announces that he has been granted the title of Baron. He explains that Count Graham himself bestowed this great honor. He then adds a sly comment, remarking how fortunate he is to have received the very title that Ines had wanted. Ines is completely stunned. She had only intended to make him a knight for the Count. She can't believe they actually went through with giving him a peerage. Her plan is escalating faster than she anticipated. Ines's mind reels in disbelief. She wonders how on earth Joseph actually became a baron. He steps closer, a triumphant smile spreading across his face as he announces his next move. As soon as the title is officially his, he will propose to her. Gently cupping her cheek, he whispers that their secret affair will finally be over. Soon, he promises, they can become a proud, public couple. Her plan has spiraled completely out of control, accidentally rocketing him into the world of nobility. Joseph smugly declares that with his new title, no one will dare oppose their marriage. But for Ines, his words trigger a horrifying vision of the future, the wedding that ultimately leads to her doom. The thought of that dark timeline repeating itself makes her blood run cold. Snapping out of it, she puts on a sweet smile and tells him it's far too early to talk about marriage. She reminds him she still needs to get permission. Joseph then says they should go, explaining that as a knight, he can't abandon his master's side. Ines scoffs, telling Joseph his excuse is ridiculous. He seems confused, but she quickly covers, telling him to hurry back to his master since nobles are so sensitive. Taking her words at face value, Joseph agrees to leave, promising to see her again soon. The second he turns to walk away, Ines's sweet expression evaporates, replaced by a gaze of pure ice. But their private moment wasn't so private after all. From the shadows, Carson had been watching the entire exchange, his intense eyes fixed on Ines. From his hiding spot, Carson assumes he's watching a secret meeting between lovers. But the more he observes, the more he senses something is deeply wrong. He realizes they can't be called lovers. The emotions are strangely different. Meanwhile, Ines walks away down the long hall, her mind spiraling. She can't figure out Count Graham's endgame. Why elevate a mere knight to a baron? She fears this is the first move in a calculated plot to utterly destroy her family. As Ines walks away, her mind races, trying to decipher Count Graham's true intentions. The unanswered questions give her a splitting headache, and she pauses, needing a moment to clear her head. Suddenly, she freezes, sensing a presence nearby. Whipping around, she calls out into the empty hall, demanding to know who is there. A figure steps out from the shadows. It's Carson. He calmly looks her over and remarks that it seems she's had quite a lot to drink. A sudden, gut-wrenching memory flashes through Ines's mind. It's Joseph, entangled with Count Graham's red-haired daughter. The woman whispers that it's too late now, pulling him in for an intimate moment. Ines reels from the revelation. She never knew about their secret affair. She had been completely in the dark about this betrayal. But the shock quickly melts away, replaced by a wicked, triumphant grin. This changes everything. She now has the perfect, undeniable reason to reject Count Graham's marriage proposal and ruin his plans. The memory played out in vivid detail. Count Graham's daughter complained about the royals before demanding Joseph give her his undivided attention. Snapping back to the present, Ines turned to leave, dismissing the encounter as unimportant. But before she could take a single step, a hand shot out from behind, gripping her shoulder firmly. Carson wasn't about to let her just walk away. A hand suddenly clamps over Ines's mouth, silencing her protest. She's completely shocked, her own hands trembling as she tries to struggle free. She thought she was alone out here. But then a low, familiar voice whispers her name directly into her ear. Her eyes widen in disbelief. It couldn't be him, could it? Turning slightly, she confirms her suspicion. It's Carson. Utterly stunned, she whispers his title as he holds her firmly, refusing to let go. He has her completely trapped. Carson pulls Ines closer, a finger pressed to his lips. He whispers for her to be quiet, ignoring her shocked question of how he got there. As he holds her, another piece of the damning memory plays out. Now sitting together in a private room, he got straight to business. He revealed that her family name had been mentioned in the meeting. He then locked eyes with her, asking if she knew the two people they had just secretly watched. Ines replied that while the woman was a stranger, the man was all too familiar. Her hands tightened into fists as she identified him as her fiancé, Joseph. Carson, noticing her distress, asked if she was all right. With ice in her voice, Ines dismissed Joseph as someone who would be sorted out soon enough. Changing the subject, Carson revealed that Lena Merriere had confessed. This news shocked the Empress, who believed Lena had perished in a fire. Carson explained that was a false rumor he started. Lena was alive and well, staying in the mansion with her son, Jason. Carson dropped another bombshell on the Empress. To keep Lena quiet, Count Graham had taken her son, Jason, hostage. The Empress expressed her relief that the boy was safe, but Carson slyly pointed out she didn't seem surprised by Graham's involvement. He then revealed his plan to keep Lena's survival a secret for a while longer. The Empress questioned this, arguing Lena was the perfect evidence to expose Graham. But Carson shook his head, explaining that it wasn't enough. He was hunting for a much bigger prize. The Empress questioned what bigger prize Carson was after. With a cold gaze, Carson revealed his true target, the person protecting Count Graham, Her Majesty the Empress herself. The revelation sent a shockwave through Ines. She realized the conspiracy was far larger than she could have imagined. Just then, A knock at the door broke the tension. Noah, Carson's aide, peeked in, surprised to see Ines. He apologized for interrupting but insisted his lord had to return to the party immediately. It was time for the first dance, and the host was missing. With a short sigh, Carson murmured that he couldn't help it. He turned to Ines, surprising her by asking her to come with him. She stammered, questioning if he meant they should go together. With a disarming smile, Carson extended his hand, formally offering to escort her to the party. He then gently took her gloved hand in his, asking for the first dance of the banquet. Looking directly at her, he requested that she allow him to stay by her side, leaving Ines completely stunned by the bold invitation. Ines is completely flustered, her cheeks flushing red as she stares at him, stunned. Noticing her nervousness, he softly tells her to take it easy. After she stammers out an agreement, he confidently says it's time to go, and she takes his arm. As they walk out, Carson stops and turns back to Noah. He calmly states there was an error in a previous list and that the Swendon family must be included, a cunning smile playing on his lips. Left alone, Noah processed his master's last-minute command. At first, he was confused, but then the pieces clicked into place. His lord, escorting Lady Ines, making a strategic move, a brilliant smile broke across Noah's face. This was so much better than he could have imagined. It meant Carson might finally find a proper hostess, sooner than expected. Filled with renewed purpose, he exclaimed his approval and dashed off to update the list immediately, his steps light with excitement. His master's plan was truly something else. As they walked towards the grand doors of the banquet hall, Ines's anxiety soared. Her hand tightened on his arm as she realized that the second they walked through that door, all eyes would be on them. She confessed that this was her first time at such a large event, and it felt incredibly awkward. Carson glanced down at her, a confident smirk playing on his lips. He coolly asked if she was nervous too, adding that he, on the other hand, felt completely calm about the whole thing. Carson let out a soft laugh, teasing Ines that she had a surprisingly cute side. Completely flustered, she asked if he was kidding her. She nervously confessed that she hadn't been to many banquets and had never danced with any man other than her father. This was her first time. The word first seemed to capture his full attention. Ines continued, admitting it felt strange to be 20 and only just now having her first real dance, even though she'd had her debutante years ago. Ines's mind drifted to the past. By the time of her debutante, she already liked Joseph. At 16, she'd even imagined becoming a commoner's wife. Carson's expression grew serious as he processed her words. 4 years had passed since her debut, yet this was her first dance. He realized Joseph must have been someone she couldn't easily forget. As they walked towards the brightly lit doorway, he quietly asked why she chose to come to this specific banquet. Before she could answer, a noble couple inside spotted their grand entrance with surprise. A wave of whispers rippled through the banquet hall. Lord Carson had arrived, but all eyes were on the unknown woman by his side. Ignoring the crowd, Carson leaned close to a stunned Ines, telling her he would now announce what he couldn't last time. Before she could process his words, her gaze swept across the room and locked onto a single target, Joseph. Seeing him with another woman, a chilling, triumphant smirk spread across her face. She silently wondered how her traitorous husband felt at that very moment. Gazing at Joseph from across the room, Ines silently taunted him, wondering if he felt foolish for being so easily swayed by her. Her confident facade faltered as she turned back to Carson, admitting she had forgotten she wasn't a good dancer due to her lack of experience. She shyly hoped she wouldn't step on his toes. Carson simply smiled, telling her that if she was the Lady of Swendon, she could step on as many feet as she wanted. He held out his hand, formally inviting her to dance, leaving Ines stunned. As their dance began, Carson suddenly asked Ines if she knew how to swim. Baffled, she admitted she didn't and questioned his strange inquiry. He cryptically mentioned they were in the same boat, wondering aloud if she might fall into the water. Seeing her nervousness, he told her not to worry. Pulling her into a secure embrace, Carson leaned in and confidently declared he would save her if she fell, because he was a very good swimmer. Ines could only stare, completely captivated by his protective words. As they gracefully moved across the dance floor, Carson watched Ines with a gentle smile. He silently noted that while she was a bit clumsy, her movements were natural and elegant. He mused that if she frequented banquets, she would undoubtedly have countless men lining up to ask for a dance. From across the hall, Joseph's expression darkened considerably. His eyes burned with an intense, possessive fury as he watched his former wife in another man's arms, completely unable to hide his seething jealousy. As their dance continued, Carson suddenly asked Ines if it was really all right. Confused, she questioned what he meant. He pointed out that 4 years was a long time and then cut straight to the point, asking if she loved that man from earlier, Joseph. The question stunned Ines, the idea of love for her traitorous husband sounding ridiculous. As the song ended, they stopped moving. Facing him directly, she replied with cold certainty that no, she did not love Joseph at all. A satisfied smirk appeared on Carson's face, pleased with her decisive answer. As they stood apart, an announcer's voice filled the hall, proclaiming the next piece to be the hymn to the goddess of victory. With a swift motion, the conductor raised his baton, and a powerful new melody swept through the room. Without a moment's hesitation, Carson extended his hand to Ines again. He was asking for a second dance in a row, making it clear he had no intention of letting anyone else have her attention. As she placed her hand in his, a powerful thought crossed her mind. Even though the world seemed full of malice and contempt for her, Carson remained a constant. Just as he had done before, he was once again saving her when she needed it most. Pulled gently into his arms, they began to move with the music once more. After the banquet, which went much better than he'd anticipated, Carson summoned his aide, Noah. He had a discreet task for him, to investigate the financial situation of the Swendon Viscountcy. A surprised Noah cheekily asked if Carson was already checking the size of Ines's dowry, impressed by his proactive nature. Carson immediately shot the idea down. He explained that his investigation had nothing to do with that. It was based on a comment made by Count Graham's daughter. Carson continued, relaying the noble lady's strange comments. She'd bragged about her talent for spotting money-making schemes and worried Ines might interfere with their plans. Apparently, the grand plot was for Swendon to be absorbed by Landhill, only for another territory to then take over Landhill itself. A shocked Noah thought the idea was absurd, but based on her confidence, Carson knew something was afoot. He ordered Noah to dig into Swendon's finances, searching every inch and leaving no single detail overlooked. He needed to know everything. Later that night, Ines made her way home in a carriage, accompanied by her lady-in-waiting, Lena. Breaking the comfortable silence, Lena asked about Count Raymond, wondering where he had gone. Ines explained that Carson's father had to leave the banquet early, stating that some urgent business had come up that required his immediate attention. This surprised Lena, who questioned what could have been so important. It was clear that behind the glamour of the party, powerful figures were already making their moves in the shadows. As they rode, Lena asked Ines how she enjoyed the banquet and, more importantly, if she had danced. Feeling a bit awkward, Ines quietly confirmed that she had. Lena's eyes immediately lit up with excitement, pressing for the name of the lucky young nobleman. Ines calmly revealed that her partner was the Count. Stunned, Lena asked if she meant the Count. Ines then dropped the bombshell, confirming she had danced with Lord Carson. Utterly shocked, Lena asked if it was really true, and Ines simply replied that she knows it sounds like a lie. Lena sighed, completely starstruck by the news. She imagined the two of them dancing, saying it must have been a beautiful, dreamlike scene. As a memory of their dance flashed in her mind, Ines quietly agreed. She never thought she'd experience such a moment after returning to the past. Thinking about how Carson said they were in the same boat, she felt glad to be helping him. Suddenly, Lena clapped her hands, excitedly announcing she'd finally found it. It was the portrait of Lord Carson that Ines had asked for earlier. Lena beamed, announcing she'd finally secured the rare portrait of Lord Carson. She promised to bring it to Ines the moment it arrived. Though her heart raced, Ines calmly instructed Lena to place it in her personal library. Seeing her lady's reaction, Lena thought she was adorable. Then, she asked a crucial question. Since Ines danced with Lord Carson, did this mean she wouldn't be meeting Sir Joseph anymore? The cheerful mood vanished. Ines fell silent, her expression turning cold and calculating as she considered the name of her treacherous husband. Lena breaks the heavy silence, cheerfully admitting she never thought Sir Joseph was a good match for Ines anyway. She suggests this is the perfect opportunity to finally end things with him. Internally, Ines agrees. Since she now knows Count Graham orchestrated her past demise, meeting Joseph seems pointless. However, she realizes she can't just discard him yet. She needs to keep him close until she understands Graham's true intentions. Just as she tells Lena she's unsure, the carriage will suddenly shatters, throwing them forward. Lena cries out in alarm as Ines catches herself, completely stunned. Suddenly, the carriage door was yanked open, revealing Sir Joseph standing outside. He called Ines's name, coolly stating they still had unfinished business to discuss. Ines's blood ran cold as she glared at her former husband. She demanded to know what he was talking about, showing up so unexpectedly. Unfazed, Joseph simply ordered her to come out and talk. Though Lena looked on with worry, Ines reassured her she was fine. With a determined expression, Ines stepped out of the carriage, ready to confront the man who destroyed her life. Standing by the broken carriage, Joseph furiously confronted Ines. He demanded to know how she could dance with a prince right in front of him, her own fiancé. Unbothered, Ines simply stated that she couldn't help it. She calmly explained that Lord Carson invited her to dance as a gesture of gratitude for saving his brother's life. How could she possibly refuse a prince? Though he seemed to accept her logic for a moment, Joseph's jealousy exploded. He insisted that the way Carson looked at her was anything but ordinary. Ines sighed, coolly reminding Joseph that no matter how upset he was, he should still address the prince with the proper title of my lord. Her calm demeanor only enraged him further. Losing his composure completely, Joseph slammed his fist against the carriage wall right next to her head, trapping her. He leaned in close, snarling as he demanded to know if correcting him was really the most important thing in this situation. But Ines didn't even flinch, staring back at the man who was rapidly losing control. Ines calmly told Joseph to get a grip, dismissing his paranoia about Lord Carson as pure imagination. But Joseph wasn't having it. He grabbed her hand, insisting his feelings for her hadn't changed and demanding she reassure him. Confused, Ines could only stare. Taking her silence as an invitation, he leaned in closer, creepily asking for a kiss of oath so the Water Lord could watch over their love. Utterly disgusted, Ines slapped his hand away, shutting down his delusional fantasy on the spot. Ines coldly questioned if this was his twisted way of showing love. She laid into him, asking if ambushing her on the road and demanding a kiss was how he intended to protect her honor. Stuttering, Joseph tried to defend himself, but quickly gave up. Overwhelmed by his mistake, he dropped to his knees, confessing his anxiety got the better of him and begged her to forgive his actions. Looking down at the pathetic man, Ines granted him forgiveness just this once, but warned him never to disappoint her again. Humbled, Joseph meekly promised to keep her warning in mind. As he rose to his feet, he spotted a handkerchief on the ground and tried to return it to her. But Ines was already boarding her carriage. With a chillingly detached tone, she told him it was dirty and to just throw it away, then ordered the driver to depart. As the carriage pulled away, Joseph was left standing alone, clutching the fabric. Ines watched his pathetic figure shrink in the distance, musing that he was clinging to something she had already thrown away. Back in her carriage, Ines cracked a small, satisfied smile. She found this new game of manipulation to be quite fun. Meanwhile, in a grand office, Lord Carson was all business. An aide handed him a detailed report on the assets of the Swendon family. The aide explained that they ran a large, stable wool business, but were otherwise an ordinary Viscount family. Just as Carson absorbed this, his aide suddenly recalled a crucial detail. The Swendons also owned a mountain range that served as the border between Lazonia and their lands. The mention of a mountain range sparked Carson's interest. A slow, calculating smile spread across his face. He had just found the key piece of information he was looking for. He immediately asked Noah if Viscount Swendon would also be attending the upcoming hunting festival. After Noah confirmed the Viscount's attendance, Carson leaned back with satisfaction. A plan was already forming. He decided he would just have to approach the man directly at the event and ask him what he wanted to know. The day of the hunting festival finally arrived. Ines attended on behalf of her father, who was still busy dealing with land disputes from the banquet. As she looked for Viscount Swendon's seat, a familiar voice suddenly called her name. Ines turned and was surprised to see the young Princess Louis running toward her with a huge smile. The princess happily exclaimed it had been too long. Ines smiled warmly in return, asking how she was. Louis explained that her brother had told her Ines was coming to the festival. Princess Louis explained she'd seen her brother and decided to follow him. Suddenly, she stopped short, addressing the man before them as, "Your Majesty, the Lord." It was Carson. Louis happily greeted her brother, but his gaze was fixed on Ines. He cut straight to the point, asking if Viscount Swendon was present. Ines explained that he was absent, handling other matters. Carson's plan to ask about the mountain range instantly crumbled. He muttered that it was a pity, just as Louis cheerfully invited Ines to join them at their tent. They entered the lavish tent and sat down. Suddenly, Ines froze. A powerful sense of déjà vu washed over her as she stared out the entrance, trapped in a forgotten memory. A vivid memory from her past life suddenly overwhelmed Ines. She recalled a moment of perfect peace, the warm sunlight, a gentle breeze, and Carson sitting right beside her. The serenity felt almost dreamlike. But her flashback was shattered when a woman's voice filled the tent. An older countess walked in, remarking that she had expected Ines to be here. Ines greeted her politely, and the countess immediately apologized for being unable to attend the recent banquet. The countess introduced the man beside her as a member of her family, asking Ines to say hello. The man, Jemern Winningstone, smiled pleasantly and mentioned his recent appointment as a baron. But Ines froze, her mind ripped back to a horrifying memory from her past. She remembered that same man standing behind a menacing woman as people lay defeated on the floor. His friendly smile was replaced by a sinister smirk. The name echoed in her thoughts with chilling certainty. It was really him. Jemern called out her name, asking if she was all right as she lay on the floor. But his voice was a distant echo to Ines. Her mind had been thrown back into the past, into the clutches of her monstrous husband, Joseph. She vividly remembered his terrifying vow to chase her to the very ends of the earth if she ever left him. His past cruelty and Jemern's current kindness blurred together in her vision, and all she could do was silently beg for the horrifying nightmare to finally end. Just as Ines collapsed, Carson moved like lightning, catching her in his arms. He held her protectively, his expression hardening. The man who caused this, Jemern, simply stated that she wouldn't be able to greet them at the moment. Before anyone else could react, Carson's aide, Noah, took command. He coolly instructed the shocked countess and Jemern to leave immediately. The startled noblewoman quickly agreed. Carried to a separate room, Ines desperately tried to calm herself, thinking that this Jemern didn't know her. But the panic was overwhelming. Carson knelt before her, gently asking if she could hear him. Gasping, Ines choked out that she couldn't breathe. His gaze fell on the tight ribbon constricting her neck. Without hesitation, he reached out and swiftly untied it, letting it fall to the floor. Ines finally drew a ragged breath, thanking him. But Carson simply looked at her with concern, stating that she was still shaking terribly. Seeing her still trembling, Carson decided they needed to call a doctor. But Ines instantly shot that down. Before he could move, she latched onto his sleeve, desperately pleading for him not to go. She couldn't be alone right now. Her mind was a mess. She knew Jemern couldn't actually hurt her, but her body was still reacting with pure terror. As she started to pull her hand back, full of doubt, Carson quietly held out a warm drink, gently trying to calm her frayed nerves and bring her back to the present. But just as his back was turned, a loud clatter broke the silence. The mug smashed against the floor. He whipped around in alarm, calling out her name as he saw Ines collapsing once again. Carson lunged forward, catching Ines just before she hit the ground. Realizing her mistake, she quickly offers to find him a change of clothes so he doesn't have to stay in his wet ones. Carson returns, but instead of clothes for himself, he holds out a fresh set for Ines. He tells her to please change into them. She quickly refuses, insisting she's fine. She's worried that wearing a man's clothes will cause a commotion outside and feels she's already been too much of a bother. Carson points to her torn dress on the floor, arguing that even a jacket won't hide the damage. He gently insists she put the clothes on, then turns to leave, promising to be back soon so she can change in private. Ines reappeared, having changed into the clothes Carson provided. He returned and looked her over, remarking that the shirt was quite big on her and needed some fixing. As he stepped forward, Ines quickly insisted she would do it herself, fumbling with the oversized sleeve. Carson gently took her hand, stopping her. He told her he wanted to do it for her, explaining that he would just keep worrying about it if he didn't. With a soft smile, he carefully began to roll up the long sleeves for her. Carson quickly laid out an escape plan. He told her to listen closely. The moment he stepped outside, a trumpet would sound. That was her signal. She had to count to 200 in her head. By the time she finished, he promised, all the men would be gone for the hunt. Ines confessed she was simply worried about what others would think. With a reassuring smile, Carson asked her to wait. A sharp blast from a trumpet suddenly echoed from outside, and Ines turned, ready to begin her count. The trumpet blared, the signal she was waiting for. Ines knew it meant the men had finally left for the hunt. But her relief vanished when she remembered seeing Joseph earlier. He wasn't dressed for hunting, which meant he was probably still nearby. The thought of running into him sent a chill down her spine. Steeling her nerves, she finished her count and stepped out into the open. Just as she thought she was clear, a small voice called her name. It was the young girl, Louis, calling her princess. Her escape had hit a snag. Louis looked up at Ines, her face full of concern. The little girl confessed that she hadn't been scared, but she was worried about Ines. Touched by the sweet gesture, Ines put on a warm smile and assured Louis she was perfectly fine, thanking her. To distract the child, she invited her to go see the rabbits, and Louis happily agreed. They stepped outside into a sunny garden, but Inez's expression quickly soured. There were far more noble ladies out here than she'd anticipated, complicating her escape plan even further. The idyllic scene in the garden was just a dream. Inez gently held a small rabbit, whispering the name Charlotte. But the peaceful vision shattered when a voice called out, telling her to wake up. Her eyes snapped open to a grim reality, a dark, cold cell. A young boy with a kind but bruised face stood before her, offering a piece of bread he'd hidden away. He insisted she eat, explaining he'd heard she hadn't had anything since yesterday. Tears streamed down Inez's face as she accepted the small kindness, thanking the boy who always took care of her. The grim memory of the cell faded, leaving Inez in the sunlit garden. She thought she would never see Charlotte again. Just then, a friendly noblewoman approached them. Inez introduced herself, only to feel a chill as the woman revealed her own name, Charlotte Delapina. With a smile, Charlotte explained her last name was unusual because her husband was from another country. But Inez's mind raced. She remembered the dark rumors surrounding Charlotte's husband, that he met a terrible end, and it was by his own wife's hands. Inez's mind reeled with the dark rumors she'd heard. For her supposed crime, Charlotte had been sent away. Yet here she stood. Inez cut straight to the point, asking how it was possible. Charlotte explained that her husband had been transferred to a new job in Lazonia. But Inez caught the slip-up immediately, questioning why she was in Landhill if the business was elsewhere. Flustered, Charlotte tried to recover, but Inez played it off, claiming she'd just assumed since the festival was a local event. Sensing the tension, Charlotte suggested they sit down and talk. Charlotte smoothly recovers, revealing she's expecting a child, which is why afternoons are difficult for her. She then explains her husband is the general manager of the railways. They're in Landhill because of plans to build a new railroad right through town, a project backed by the Lord of Lazonia. Getting lost in the dream of new travel possibilities, Charlotte gushes about the new line. She turns to Inez, asking if she finds trains romantic. Before Inez can give a full answer, another noblewoman interrupts, announcing she must return to the princess. Sensing an opportunity, Inez asked if Charlotte was staying in Landhill. She then offered her friendship, promising to help the lonely noblewoman settle in since she was a local. Charlotte was overjoyed by the kind gesture. But as Inez walked away, her true motive surfaced. She remembered Charlotte's terrible fate in the past and silently swore to change it this time. When her companion asked about the princess, Inez coolly replied she was chasing a white rabbit. Inez figured the princess couldn't have gone far, calling out for her in the woods. But when she finally spotted the young girl, her blood ran cold. Louis was with a strange man, and the sight triggered a horrifying memory from the past. In her vision, this same man smiled cruelly as he gave the child a tainted drink. Snapping back to reality, Inez bolted forward. She grabbed the man's shoulder, her voice shaking with rage as she demanded to know what he was doing with the princess. The man quickly explained that the princess had fallen while chasing a rabbit, insisting he was only brushing dirt off her clothes. Ignoring his flimsy excuse, Inez firmly told Louis to run back down the path, promising she would follow right behind her. The little girl gave a determined nod and took off, leaving Inez alone with the stranger. His friendly act dropped instantly. A dark energy surrounded him as he asked why she was so wary, a sinister smirk forming as he questioned if she already knew who he was. The man's friendly facade vanished, replaced by a sinister grin as he asked if she knew him. His question plunged Inez into a nightmarish flashback of her ex-husband, Joseph. She saw his twisted, obsessive face as he whispered her name with a possessive hunger. Dragged back to the present, a cold dread washed over her as the stranger continued. He confirmed he knew exactly who she was, sending a shiver down her spine as he asked if she was Lady Inez Swendon. He had found her. Inez's mind went blank. She was positive she'd never heard the name Swendon before. The man took a confident step forward, wondering why it felt like she already knew him. Inez shot back, asking if she was obligated to answer. He just smirked, agreeing she didn't have to say a thing. But then he leaned in close, his gaze dropping to her attire. He casually pointed out that she wasn't dressed like a woman. The unexpected comment stunned Inez into silence as he invaded her personal space. With a smug grin, he asked if her clothes belonged to her lord. Before Inez could react, he lashed out with a vicious kick, sending her tumbling to the dirt. The sudden attack left her stunned and gasping. The man seemed momentarily surprised by his own violent impulse, a flicker of an old memory crossing his mind. Shaking it off, he offered Inez a hand. But her eyes burned with pure defiance as she stared back, fiercely warning him not to lay a single finger on her. The man's aggression vanished, replaced by a condescending smile. He offered his hand, telling her a nobleman's daughter shouldn't be on the ground. Ines was momentarily baffled by his sudden gentlemanly act, but his words triggered a powerful realization. That's right. In this life, she wasn't some helpless prisoner. She was a viscount's daughter, a station far above this mere baronet. He was just a fool who'd barely scraped his way into nobility. Her confidence surged. He had no right to lay a single hand on her. The man flinched, taking an involuntary step back as Ines's confidence flared. He tried to regain control, questioning if she was even a noble. Ines scoffed, turning the tables on him. She coolly stated that she'd heard he was the one who had only recently become a baronet and clearly had no idea how to behave. She reminded him she fell because of his unpleasant actions. He weakly argued that he hadn't pushed her, but she cut him off, fiercely questioning why he would threaten a lone person so aggressively. The baronet desperately tried to justify himself, bringing up an incident with the princess. Ines just stared him down, calmly asking if the princess had even requested his help in the first place. He stammered that he couldn't just ignore someone in trouble. That's when Ines dropped a bombshell. She explained that in their empire, touching a royal without permission was strictly forbidden. For a man to touch a female royal was a grave offense, a crime equal to insulting the entire imperial family. The baronet's face went white, the consequences of his actions finally dawning on him. Carson condescendingly told Ines she should have studied her duties properly. He sneered that these days it seemed anyone could become a noble. Ines clutched her head, claiming a headache was coming on. His words triggered a dark memory of her husband, Joseph. She recalled his terrifying obsession, how he relentlessly tormented her in her past life. But as she looked at Carson, she didn't see a monster. Compared to the demon she once knew, this man just seemed like a skinny, subservient person, completely different from her ex. The baronet weakly told Carson not to criticize him, claiming it was the lady's judgment. The overwhelming stress finally hit her. Her legs gave out, and she crumpled towards the forest floor. As her vision blurred, Ines fiercely thought to herself that he would never be able to touch her again. Just as she was about to pass out, a panicked voice screamed her name. Suddenly, Joseph was there, sprinting towards her with a desperate look on his face. He caught her just in time. Dazed and confused, Ines looked up into the eyes of her tormentor, weakly questioning if it was her lord. Just as she stumbled, Carson was there, kneeling beside her and asking if she was okay. Ines, ever the lady, immediately apologized for getting dirt on his clothes. Without another word, he swept her off her feet. Ines panicked, insisting she could walk, but he cut her off with a single, firm word. Ines. Carson held her firmly, telling her to listen. He wasn't playing around. She was bleeding way too much to be walking anywhere. Stunned and too weak to fight back, Ines could only agree. With that settled, he turned and carried her through the sunlit forest, without another word. The next thing she knew, Ines was lying in a lavish bed, safe and sound. Carson, Noah, and little Louis stood watch over her, their faces etched with worry as they waited for her to finally wake up. Carson stood over her, explaining that her wound wasn't deep, but still needed stitches. He sternly told her she'd need plenty of rest. But Ines couldn't help but smile, noticing he and little Louis had the exact same worried expression. Carson's brow furrowed, asking if she was laughing. She insisted it didn't hurt much, but he shot back that it was torn badly enough for stitches. Curious, Ines asked how he found her. He replied that Louis had run to him, panicked, saying Ines was with a dangerous animal. Ines was confused by the dangerous animal comment. Little Louis, hiding behind Carson, explained that a snake had crawled onto her dress, but Ines had managed to get rid of it. Carson's expression grew serious, pointing out how bad it would have been if she'd been bitten. But Ines knew Louis wasn't talking about a reptile. She meant a man named Jemern. A shiver ran down her spine as she pictured his unsettling grin. She knew if Carson found out the truth, he wouldn't have let it go so easily. Ines wanted to brush the whole thing off, hoping they wouldn't make a fuss. As his mind raced, a memory surfaced. He recalled seeing a man watching them from the shadows as he carried Ines out of the forest. It finally clicked. The dangerous animal wasn't a snake at all, it was a person. And that worried him deeply. Carson's mind finally landed on a name, Jemern Winingstone. He mused that the man did have a certain snake-like quality to him. He remembered hearing gossip from Lady Jefferson about Jemern being desperate to climb the social ladder, especially how he insisted on meeting the prince. But it didn't make sense. The hunting festival was the perfect place to network with powerful men. So, why was he lurking near the area reserved only for the young ladies? A dark, knowing smirk spread across Carson's face. Something was definitely not right. Carson was certain that man was up to something. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock as his aide, Noah, entered the room. Noah mentioned hearing that another lady had been injured at the festival while avoiding a dangerous beast. Although Carson acknowledged she was okay, the story troubled him. He couldn't shake the memory of Inez's panicked face. He knew he couldn't just let this go. With a serious tone, Carson ordered Noah to investigate Jemern Whiningstone. Noah recognized the name, asking if he was the one who had recently become a baronet. Carson confirmed they needed answers quickly. He gave Noah a specific task: check if Jemern had a history of causing trouble with women. Noah cautiously asked if this was because of Inez. With a chilling smirk, Carson admitted she was a factor. Seeing the dark look in his master's eyes, Noah nervously asked if he was planning to permanently silence the man. Carson's cold stare was answer enough. As his aide jotted down the name with a skull beside it, at the top were two names, Graham and Joseph. He decided it was best to eliminate all these nuisances before any more dangerous problems could pop up. A cold resolve settled over him, and he clenched his fist, ready to act. But his dark plotting was shattered by a frantic scream. A young noble girl, Louis, came sprinting towards him, shouting for her brother. With a panicked look on her face, she cried out that something terrible had happened, leaving his aide Noah stunned. Carson asked his frantic sister what was happening, but her next words hit him like a lightning bolt. Louis shrieked that Inez was in danger. Instantly, a dangerous energy pulsed from Carson. The air grew heavy as his playful expression vanished, replaced by a cold, deadly focus. In that moment, he realized something critical. To prevent any more dangerous situations from happening and to truly protect her from the shadows closing in, there was only one solution. He had to keep Inez by his side at all costs. Later, one of Carson's men reported back with new intel. He had investigated Swendon's mine as requested and confirmed something was definitely suspicious. When Carson asked for details, the man revealed he saw knights from the Graham estate guarding the mine, seemingly searching for something. Carson let out a smirk. He figured the money-obsessed Count Graham was just looking for a new mine. Connecting the dots to the Count's railway business, Carson realized he was scouting for a new route. But a darker thought surfaced, revealing the Count's truly greedy ambitions. Carson's blood ran cold as the disgusting truth clicked into place. Count Graham must have discovered something valuable on the Swendon land. To seize control of the mine, the greedy Count decided to use Inez. But Carson realized marriage alone wasn't enough for his twisted ambitions, and he wondered what other vile schemes were plotted. Later, new testimony filled in a dark piece of the puzzle. A shopkeeper recalled Inez buying oil from him on that fateful day before seeing her head up the mountain with her husband, Joseph. The shopkeeper's final words sealed Inez's fate in her past life. He testified that he saw her returning from the mountain completely alone. With Joseph now missing, all eyes turned to her. The scene flashes back to a grim courtroom, the final slam of a gavel echoing through the hall. In a cold, unwavering voice, the judge sentenced her to 30 years in the hellish Romfield prison. Inez jolts awake from the nightmare, gasping. But the horror isn't over. She stumbles back, realizing with dawning terror that she is surrounded by cold, familiar stone walls. This is her cell. Trapped in her nightmare, a horrifying memory surfaced. She had taken the life of a royal. Inez tried to deny it, desperately telling herself she couldn't be back in Romfield. But the cold stone walls were undeniable. A terrifying silhouette appeared at her cell door, the vision of a smirking man flashing through her mind. A scream ripped from her lungs, echoing through the dungeon. Just then, footsteps approached from the darkness. A calm voice cut through her panic, calling her name. But it wasn't a savior who appeared. Two men loomed over her, their shadows swallowing the dim light. A cruel voice taunted her, asking why she bothered him. Then, another voice filled with venom declared that she couldn't escape because she belonged to him. Terrified, Inez screamed for them to get away. The metallic click of a key turning in the lock sent a fresh wave of panic through her. As the cell door creaked open, she scrambled to her feet and bolted down the dark corridor, desperate to escape her tormentors. Screaming for her tormentors to disappear, Inez flees through the suffocating darkness, desperate for them to get out of her sight. Suddenly, the nightmare prison melts away, leaving her standing alone in a torrential downpour. A worried voice cuts through the rain, calling her, "Young lady." The man rushes forward, his face a mask of concern as he shouts her name. Soaked and bewildered, Inez turns. Staring at the familiar figure, she can only whisper in disbelief. It was Carson. The prison was gone, but her confusion had just begun. Tears stream down Iness's face as a profound realization hits her. He had come to save her again. A flood of memories rushes back. The time she was drowning in the river, when she stood gravely wounded in the square. Through every moment of torment, he was always there. Seeing her break down, Carson calls her name with urgency. He rushes forward, grabbing her arm and pulling her into a comforting embrace. His voice is a steady presence in the storm as he tells her everything is all right now. Clinging to Carson in the pouring rain, Iness breaks down completely. She sobs that she was wrong, desperately begging for his forgiveness. Carson holds her tight, his voice firm as he insists she hasn't done anything wrong. But his reassurance can't break through her despair. Seeing her so distraught, he changes his approach. Looking down at her with pained eyes, he promises to forgive everything. He will grant her anything if it will just bring her peace. With the last of her strength gone, Iness collapses in Carson's arms. The world fades to black, and when she opens her eyes again, she's in a sun-drenched, unfamiliar room. Clutching her throbbing head, she struggles to sit up. What happened yesterday? The memories are a confusing haze. She remembers the horrifying hallucinations of the people she left behind, but then another image surfaces, the feeling of Carson holding her in the rain. Was he really there, or was that just another part of her nightmare? Flashes of memory bombard Iness. She recalls screaming at someone to stay away, her own hand gripping a knife in a threatening gesture. The horrifying truth crashes down on her. It wasn't a hallucination. Carson was really there. A desperate need to see him consumes her. She leaps from the bed and rushes to the door, pulling it open. But the person standing on the other side isn't Carson. It's a strange man with fiery red hair who looks at her in shock and calls her Lady Swendon. Weakly, Iness confronts the man, asking who he is. He introduces himself as Marcus, a knight of Randhill, claiming he was just on patrol. But her eyes lock onto the bandage wrapped tightly around his arm. When she points it out, he simply smiles and asks if she doesn't recall what happened. The horrifying realization dawns on her. It was him. She was the one who hurt him during her panic state. Drowning in guilt, Iness looks away and asks if he's all right now. Gently placing her hand over his bandaged arm, Iness offers a sincere apology. But Marcus just smiles warmly, reassuring her it wasn't intentional. He even tries to take the blame, saying it was his failure as a knight for not blocking properly. Iness is struck by his noble attitude, noting he has the aura of a true knight. She asks if he comes from a knightly family. A flicker of something sad crosses his face as he looks away, admitting that he's not really suited for that life. Marcus looks away, admitting that perhaps he isn't suited to be a knight after all. Seeing the deep sadness in his eyes, Iness asks what he would have wanted to become if he wasn't born into a knightly family. Her question catches him completely off guard, and he just stares back in confusion. Iness explains that she simply thought he might have had a different dream. A heavy silence hangs between them. When she calls out Sir Knight to get his attention, he flinches as if the title itself is painful. The knight looks completely flustered by her question. He apologizes, admitting that no one has ever asked him about his dreams before, and for a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Iness worries she might have been rude, but her thoughts are cut short. With a look of sudden resolve, he clenches his fist. He confesses that he once wanted to be a doctor. Then, meeting her gaze with a surprising intensity, he corrects himself, declaring that he still does. Iness is stunned into silence by his unexpected and heartfelt confession. Iness is genuinely impressed, telling the knight that his dream is truly admirable. Completely caught off guard, he asks her to repeat that. She clarifies that she's not just impressed, she's a little envious. He has already found what he truly wants to do in life, and she wishes she could find her own purpose, too. Her sincerity seems to move him, and he simply thanks her. Now it's Iness's turn to be surprised. He explains that he has never told anyone about his dreams beyond knighthood, and he never imagined someone would actually envy him for it. The knight asks why she would envy him, explaining that some people look down on being a physician. But Iness's response is firm. She declares that life is short and precious, and if it were her, she would pursue what she truly wanted. She urges him to follow his dream before it's too late to turn back. Her sincerity touches him deeply. With a hand over his heart, he quietly promises to keep her words in mind. As he smiles, Iness finds herself staring, suddenly captivated by his vibrant red hair. As she stared at the knight, Iness thought his smile was just like warm sunlight. But her peaceful moment is shattered when a cold, authoritative voice calls her name, making her flinch. The warm memory is instantly replaced by the chilling vision of a different man entirely, Carson von Raymond. Back in the present, the red-haired knight bows deeply, greeting the newly arrived lord. Ignoring the knight completely, Carson's intense gaze locks onto Ines, commanding her to come to him. Then, he coldly dismisses the knight, telling him he may leave now. The red-haired knight, Marcus, pauses his departure. Ines stops him, leaning in close to whisper one last thing about their earlier discussion. With a genuine smile, she tells him that she will be cheering for him to achieve his dream. Her heartfelt encouragement clearly touches him. A warm smile spreads across his face as he sincerely thanks the lady for her kindness. After bowing, he announces his departure and turns to leave. Ines watches him walk away down the hall, a soft, pleasant expression on her face, glad she could offer him support. As the knight disappears, Ines smiles to herself, certain they will meet again. But her pleasant mood shatters as Carson closes the distance between them. He demands to know why she's out of bed, reminding her the doctor ordered complete rest. Ines explains she just woke up and hadn't been told. Gently cupping her face, Carson scolds her for causing trouble while unwell. Suddenly, he pulls her into a firm embrace. Stunned, Ines points out he stopped using formal language. With a smirk, he asks if she thinks that's the only line he crossed. Carson pulls back, flustered, demanding to know what else she did. He begins to make a promise for the future, but cuts himself off, clearing his throat. Deciding against it, he says they can talk later. He tells Ines he's calling the doctor and that she needs to go back and rest. As he walks away, Ines watches him, a thoughtful look on her face. A small spark of hope ignites within her as she quietly wonders if maybe, just maybe, she's finally gotten a little closer to him. The bedroom door bursts open as a frantic woman named Sujin rushes in, calling out for her lady. Surprised, Ines sits up and asks what's wrong. With tears welling in her eyes, Sujin questions what happened. Ines dismisses her concern, calling it a small scratch and asking why she isn't busy. Sujin emotionally lists Ines's recent close calls at the plaza and the hunting festival, declaring she couldn't possibly stay away. A little sheepish, Ines concedes she is a point, a memory of Carson holding her in the rain flashing through her mind. Ines realizes Sujin only knows about her injury, not the full story of what happened at the castle. Sujin explains that she tried to visit earlier, but the prince himself showed up. He took charge, assuring everyone he would personally see to Ines's recovery and send her home. His declaration left Ines's father deeply worried and powerless. Shocked, Ines asks if the prince really said that himself. Sujin confirms he sounded quite determined before suddenly remembering she has something for her lady. Sujin hands Ines a letter from another young lady. Taking the note, Ines's eyes widen in surprise as she begins to read. It's from Charlotte, who is worried after hearing about the injury at the hunting festival. She explains that she wanted to visit immediately, but sent a letter instead since Ines was recovering elsewhere. Charlotte wishes her a speedy recovery, so they can see each other again soon. A small, warm feeling spreads through Ines as she realizes someone was genuinely worried about her well-being. Warmed by her friend's kindness, Ines decides she'll prepare a special gift for Charlotte as soon as she returns home. Her thoughts are cut short when she is summoned to meet with the Empress. Playing it cool, Ines assures the Empress she's fine, claiming the rumors about her injury were exaggerated. The Empress changes the subject, gushing about the beautiful nature of Rand Hill, calling it the perfect place for a child to grow up. With a wistful look, she quietly adds that she hopes her husband doesn't plan on leaving anytime soon. The Empress blushes, flattered by Ines's kind words, and agrees she'd love to see her more often. But Ines notices something is off. Her Majesty seems unusually warm, fanning herself despite being wrapped in heavy layers of clothing. A sudden realization clicks into place. Ines eyes the Empress's bulky figure, taking a confident step forward. Cutting through the pleasantries, she looks the Empress dead in the eye and bluntly asks when her baby is due. The question hangs in the air, instantly shifting the mood in the room. The Empress's shoulders slump in relief as she confirms the pregnancy. The doctor told her she has about 5 months left. Ines simply nods, processing the bombshell. Her eyes drift to a stern portrait hanging on the wall, and she asks if that's the Emperor. Her Majesty confirms it is, a sad smile on her face. She explains that it was a political marriage. He had done a lot to support her family, so she always knew this union was her destiny, a matter of duty rather than affection. The Empress shifts the topic, pointing out that Ines is at the perfect age to start thinking about marriage. She asks if Ines has anyone special in mind, but Ines simply answers no. The very thought of marriage makes her sick to her stomach. Drawing from her own experience, the Empress advises her to choose a kind and gentle partner, insisting that such a trait is more important than wealth or even love. The words kind and gentle resonate with Ines, who realizes that Charlotte must have her own painful reasons for giving that specific advice. In the palace garden, Ines and the Empress say their goodbyes. Her Majesty warmly thanks Ines for coming, and Ines tells her she enjoyed their time together as well. They wave as the Empress heads back inside. But the moment Ines is alone, her expression hardens. A cold realization washes over her. Piecing everything together, she understands that Charlotte's husband is far worse than she ever imagined. With a heavy sigh, Ines decides she must visit more often to uncover the dark secrets hiding behind the palace walls. While Ines wants to help the Empress, she knows her own problems must be solved first. With a specific task in mind, she rushes into the dense forest behind her estate. She needs to find the perfect spot to carry out that before sunset. The woods are thicker than she remembered, making the journey difficult. As she trudges through the undergrowth, she thinks the mountain is harder to navigate than expected. Suddenly, her eyes fly open in surprise as she spots something unexpected just ahead in the trees. Ines pushed on, recalling a rumor about a flat spot halfway up the mountain. Sunlight blasted through the trees as she burst into a clearing. Perfect, she hadn't run into anyone. This secluded area was exactly what she needed for her plan. She scanned the serene spot, a sly smile spreading across her lips. Just as she'd hoped, she wasn't completely alone out here. It looked like her guest of honor had finally arrived, right on schedule. Standing before the mine entrance, Carson's associate was floored. He asked how Carson could have known it was a gold deposit. Carson explained it was a process of elimination. The local geology couldn't produce diamonds, leaving only iron or gold. Since their rivals already had plenty of iron but went to extreme lengths to secure this land, the prize had to be gold. Carson then realized the Empress was in the dark. If she knew about the mine, she never would have given up her leverage. She was planning to secretly take it all for herself. As Count Graham admired his gold coin, a new conflict brewed nearby. Joseph aggressively grabbed Noah by the collar, demanding answers. He gestured towards the woods, asking Noah if he really believed the woman wandering there was Ines Swendon. From a distance, Ines moved through the trees, completely unaware she was being watched. Joseph scoffed, grabbing his own collar in agitation. He declared that woman wasn't the lady he knew, but more like Ines the troublemaker. Miles away, Carson ran a hand through his hair, a grim look crossing his face. Deep in the woods, Ines grew anxious. Her plan was taking too long, and she was about to be late. Her thoughts were shattered when she flinched at the sight of a figure emerging from the shadows. It was Carson. Completely caught off guard, Ines stammered, asking what he was doing here. Carson coolly turned the question back on her. With a serious expression, he demanded to know what a noble lady like her was doing all alone, this deep in the mountains. The tension between them was razor-sharp. Cornered, Ines quickly fabricated a story. She claimed the lovely weather simply called for a walk. Carson wasn't buying it for a second, sarcastically agreeing it was the perfect place for a stroll. Flustered, she changed her story, admitting she was a little lost before asking what he was doing here. Carson cut straight to the point. He was going to tell her tomorrow, but he had discovered what Baron Beck was truly after. The bombshell dropped as he revealed he now knew what Swendon really wanted from him, leaving Ines stunned. Ines demanded to know exactly what he was talking about. Carson didn't hesitate. He revealed their real target was the Stendon mine, or more specifically, the gold buried there. The word echoed in the air as Ines stared, completely speechless. Carson continued, explaining that his investigation uncovered a massive amount of it. Suddenly, the mention of gold sent a jolt through Ines. A dark, painful memory from her previous life flashed before her eyes, and her expression twisted into one of pure horror. She sees herself imprisoned, the castle in ruins, and the tragic fate of those around her. It all clicks into place with devastating clarity. She realizes they went to such extreme lengths just for that. Carson notices her distress and calls out her name, but Ines is trapped in her thoughts. Tears fall as the awful truth sinks in. Her entire world was destroyed by nothing more than pure, ugly greed for wealth. As Ines breaks down, Carson pulls her into a firm, comforting embrace, gently calling her name. A wave of relief washes over her as she sinks into his arms. The pieces finally click together. She realizes that without Carson, she would have been completely in the dark. by incorporating her family's land into his, he has completely cut off Count Graham's access to the mountain. The greedy Count can no longer claim the gold mine. As Carson holds her tighter, Ines understands with stunning clarity that her family is finally safe. Still holding her close, Carson promised Ines that she was finally safe. He vowed that no one would ever be able to harm her or her family again. For Ines, who had lost everything, his words carried an unimaginable weight. Carson then gave her all the credit, admitting he never would have uncovered the plot if she hadn't suggested joining their lands. Pulling her even tighter, he told her that this victory, this newfound security, was something she had accomplished all on her own. As they reached the mountain, Ines shyly told Carson he could release her now. He refused, insisting he would see her safely to the carriage first. Suddenly, his expression hardened. He spotted people approaching in the distance. Acting fast, Carson pushed her down into the carriage, hiding her from view. A confused Ines asked why anyone would think he'd kidnapped her. He explained grimly that they had drawn too much attention at the banquet. Before she could react, the carriage lurched forward, whisking her away into the night. Inside the carriage, Ines shyly asked Carson to drop her off at the mansion entrance. He insisted she should ride all the way and comfortably. She confessed that she had snuck out without telling her mother and was afraid of getting scolded. Noah, who had also joined them, chuckled, teasing that she was still treated like a baby at home. A flustered Ines told him not to tease her. Suddenly, Noah's attention shifted outside, and he pointed, telling his lord to look. He'd spotted the man in charge of Rosonia's railway, and Carson immediately recognized the man with the unusual surname. A look of terror crossed Ines's face. If that man returned home furious, her friend was in mortal danger. Springing into action, Carson ordered his men to give chase at once, his carriage tearing off into the stormy night. The carriage skidded to a stop before the massive mansion, rain lashing down in the dark. Without a word, Carson and the frantic woman bolted through the storm toward the entrance. A terrified scream suddenly pierced the night from inside the house. They burst through the doors to find the enraged husband looming over his pregnant wife. But before he could make a move, Carson was a blur of motion. With a single, powerful strike, he sent the brute flying across the foyer, knocking him out cold. Ines watched, stunned, as the threat was neutralized. As Ines stared at the man lying unconscious in the rain, Carson quickly moved to cover her eyes, shielding her from the ugly sight. The woman who had guided them cried out for someone to help. Without missing a beat, Carson ordered Noah to call a doctor immediately. He pulled the shaken Ines close, his arm protectively around her shoulders. His priority was clear. They had to find the pregnant wife. Together, they burst through the mansion doors, bracing for what lay ahead. The woman with them burst into the room, frantically calling out for her friend, Charlotte. They found her inside, slumped against the wall, bruised and utterly terrified. Ines immediately rushed to her side. The pregnant woman trembled, confessing through tears that she had pushed her husband and believed she had ended his life. But Ines pulled her into a tight embrace, firmly reassuring her that she hadn't. She explained that her husband had started his attack the second he returned home, and that Ines and her companions had arrived just in time. Charlotte choked out that she only pushed him to protect her baby, but he tumbled out of an open window. Her terror then shifted as she clutched her stomach, realizing something was terribly wrong with her pregnancy. Acting fast, Carson lifted her into his arms, telling everyone they were heading to his doctor immediately. Outside in the pouring rain, Noah gave a quick assessment. Her injuries were bad, but treatable. Carson then ordered him to take the woman to the castle for care and report the entire incident to the guards. Back in the safety of the estate, Ines waited nervously. The door opened and Carson entered, a bottle of wine in hand. He sat down across from her with grave news. Charlotte had collapsed. Seeing how shaken Ines was, he poured her a glass of wine, telling her she must have been shocked and needed to rest. He assured her that the news had been delivered, so there was nothing to worry about. But a wave of guilt washed over Ines as she apologized, believing this was all because of her. Carson insisted she had no need to apologize, as this happened in his territory. But Ines, trembling, could only think about the baby, wondering if she could have saved them if she had been faster. Seeing her spiral into guilt, Carson gently asked why she always blamed herself, reminding her she didn't owe the world a debt. He then revealed a shocking truth. Had they arrived any later, the husband wouldn't have survived his fall. Stunned by this, Ines's concern shifted, and she immediately asked if the man was safe. Carson calmly explained that if they hadn't intervened, the man wouldn't have survived. Because the husband lived and the incident was deemed self-defense, Charlotte would likely just be sent away to a temple. Ines realized this was a completely different future than the one she knew. She worried about how they could prove Charlotte's innocence since they arrived after the fight. But Carson simply shook his head, telling Ines she was remembering it all wrong. He leaned in, calmly stating they both clearly saw the man attacking his pregnant wife, didn't they? Ines could only stare back, completely stunned. Ines nervously agreed to his version of the story. Carson explained this was why Charlotte had no choice but to push him. Seeing how exhausted she was, he told her to get some rest. Tucked into bed, Ines insisted she could sleep alone, but Carson refused, promising to stay until she drifted off. She tried to say she was fine, but he just smirked, asking if she planned on using his knight's arm as a pillow again. At his teasing, a small smile finally broke through her worry as he gently placed a hand on her head. Carson poured a glass of wine for his aide, Noah, telling him he did a good job. Noah then reported that the guards were ready to take Charlotte into custody as soon as she recovered. Carson ordered him to make sure the trial moved along quickly. The conversation then shifted to another matter, the Gemmerin case. Noah admitted that their investigation couldn't find any connection to Lord Swelden. However, they did discover what the man was truly after. He revealed that Lord Swelden's ambition was to become the new warden of Romfield. Carson scoffed, calling the idea of Lord Swelden as warden ridiculous. Noah, however, explained that his ambition wasn't the real problem. He handed Carson a report, revealing that Swelden was a man with cruel and disturbing personal tastes. Carson's expression hardened as he read the disturbing details. He asked if there had been another victim. Noah grimly confirmed there was, adding that the most recent person had lost an eye. It was clear this man was dangerously unstable, and his desire for the warden position was a terrifying prospect. Noah continued his report, revealing Swelden hid his victims in a remote village to protect his reputation. Disgusted, Carson muttered that the man's intentions were sickeningly obvious. Noah grimly laid out the man's entire plan. First, he would become the warden, and within a decade, the prison director. Swelden was a man who wanted to be a god in his own small world. Carson knew they couldn't let him set foot in Romfield. The damage he'd already done in the shadows was immense. With real power, countless people would suffer. Noah then revealed there was something strange about the case. When Carson asked what it was, Noah dropped a bombshell. All of Swelden's victims were blonde women. He added that 3 of them even had green eyes. The description hit Carson hard, and he seethed with rage, calling the man a monster. He immediately decided they needed to assign someone for protection. Noah confirmed they already had someone watching Gemmerin, but Carson corrected him. He wasn't worried about watching the villain. He was worried about protecting someone else. Noah asked who Carson was so worried about protecting. With a deadly serious expression, Carson declared there was only one person it could be. Ines, of course. Noah immediately shot the idea down, reminding Carson that they weren't even officially engaged yet. Carson admitted that if Ines found out, it would look bad. Then, he delivered a shocking solution. They would just do it in secret. As Noah choked on his drink, Carson justified his plan. If they were caught, they could just say it was for her safety, using her reckless mountain walk as proof she needed watching. Noah was completely baffled by his boss's logic, complaining he couldn't even begin to understand what Carson was thinking. He suggested a much simpler solution. Why not just assign her a proper guard? But Carson, setting his wine glass down, immediately rejected the idea. He stated there was no justifiable reason to do that officially. Instead, he would have someone watch over her in secret until he finished dealing with the entire situation. Just then, as Ines walked away, a voice called out, asking if she was leaving without saying a word. Ines stopped in her tracks, turning to find Carson calling out to her. She explained that she was going to greet him, but heard he was busy. Mumbling about an oblivious fool, Carson told her not to leave just yet, asking her to take a walk since he had something to say. As they strolled along the terrace, he asked if she had ever traveled outside the territory. When Ines said no, Carson followed up with a surprising question. Was there any place she'd actually like to go? Ines admitted she hadn't really traveled, turning the question back on him. Carson explained that his work took him to many countries, making him realize something profound. Everyone needs someone special who gives them a reason to return. As Ines wondered if Lewis was that person for him, Carson abruptly changed the subject. He informed her that Count Graham's trial was starting soon. Her hand clenched as he confirmed the Count was behind the plot against the royals. Carson added that thanks to her, they had secured Lena Mariere's crucial testimony. Carson declared that now was the perfect time to bring Count Graham to justice. When Ines asked what sentence he would receive, Carson's answer was chillingly simple: hanging. He explained that in the Kane's Empire, Any attempt on a royal's life was met with the ultimate penalty, without exception. Inez's expression remained cold as she thought to herself that it was a fitting end for a pathetic man. Just as she agreed aloud, Carson announced that he would be leaving the territory for a while after the trial, stopping in his tracks. He had something to take care of. Carson noticed Inez's dazed expression and called out her name. She snapped back, asking how long he would be gone. He casually guessed about 3 months, but the visible shock on her face made him immediately correct himself, saying it would only be 2. A strange unease filled Inez as she watched him get flustered. She pressed him for confirmation, asking if he would really be back in 2 months. Carson gently held her arms, promising he would be, and asked her to just wait a little while for his return. Inez looked up at him, quietly asking him to be careful and try not to cause any trouble. Seeing her genuine concern, Carson's expression softened as he pulled her into a gentle embrace. He told her not to worry, promising that everything would be over soon so she could truly be okay. As he held her, Carson made a silent, resolute vow. He would keep protecting her, ensuring that from this moment forward, she would never have to worry about anything ever again. The two shared a quiet, tender moment together. The mastermind behind the royal assassination attempt was finally revealed, Count Graham. He was the one who orchestrated the vicious attack on the princess at Rasonia Square. With news of his upcoming trial spreading across the empire, his grim fate was all but sealed. As Inez sat reading the report, her staff interrupted her thoughts. She was informed that Sir Joseph had come to visit again. Annoyingly, he had been showing up every single day since the Count was captured, creating a new headache for Inez to deal with. Inez found Joseph's desperation baffling. His former master, Count Graham, was the one facing his end, yet Joseph was the one acting like his world was collapsing. She coldly told her staff she wouldn't see him. But the maid returned with an alternative, a letter he insisted she deliver. Annoyed by his persistence, Inez took it. The note started with pathetic whining, asking why she ignored him and claiming he would rather perish. Then, the tone shifted into a dark threat. If she rejected him again, he would expose the truth of their relationship to everyone. Inez scoffed at Joseph's latest letter. His pathetic threats had now shifted to spreading rumors. She coolly ordered her maid, Susan, to burn this one just like the others. Susan hesitated, her expression full of concern. She mentioned that Joseph seemed different today, that his eyes held a desperate, unhinged look. But Inez remained unfazed, assuring her it was fine. This was all part of the plan. She needed to push him further, to let his desperation grow until he had no other option but to come crawling back to her himself. Inez, under the alias Charlotte, visited a woman under her protection. The lady was doing well, explaining that everyone treated her kindly, assuming she was a close acquaintance of the Lord. But her mood darkened as she confessed a problem. Her husband had repeatedly requested to see her, but she had refused every time, admitting she lacked the courage to face him again. Hearing this, Inez's own dark past came rushing back. Her fist clenched as she gave the woman a stern warning. Do not meet him.
He is not someone you need to see.
The woman's eyes filled with a new, somber resolve. She agreed with Inez, stroking her own arm for comfort. She admitted that with no child tying them together anymore, she had no reason to endure her husband. A tearful smile appeared on her face as she confessed a strange sense of relief. If this tragedy hadn't occurred, she might never have escaped. Looking at Inez with profound gratitude, she wondered what her life would have become if they hadn't met at the hunting festival that day. The woman recounted the grim fate she had narrowly avoided. If her husband hadn't survived the fall, and without the testimonies from Inez and the Lord, she would have been sent to the dreaded Romfield. Luckily, she was spared that horror. However, she still faced a punishment. 5 years of service as a maid at Edmont Temple. Inez seethed at the injustice. It was a heavy price for self-defense. Then a location caught her attention. She asked if the temple was in Sanskaria, suddenly recalling the city's major significance to her own plans. The woman's face lit up with a small, hopeful smile. She mentioned that she'd get to take the train on her way to the temple, a simple joy she never thought she would experience. Suddenly, her expression turned serious. She took Inez's hand and asked what her real surname was, not the fake one she'd been using. Inez was caught off guard, hesitating to reveal her dangerous secret. Seeing this, the woman offered a gift of trust. She bestowed her own family name, declaring that Inez would now be known as Charlotte McFadden. Charlotte smiled, admitting it felt strange to say her real name after so long. Inez gently took her hands and told her that the name suited her perfectly. Blushing, Charlotte asked if she really thought so. Ines insisted that the past was over and that it was time for Charlotte to live with her real name and make this new life her own. A joyful smile spread across Charlotte's face as she agreed. Looking at her newfound friend, Ines felt a wave of relief. She was glad that, in this life, she was able to protect her. As the door clicked open, Ines announced it was time to leave. But before they could head home, she told her maid they had an unusual errand. She needed to stop by the hardware store. Her maid was completely baffled by the strange request. With a look of steely determination, Ines simply stated there was something she needed to buy. Later, as they walked through the courtyard, her confused maid asked why she had purchased such a peculiar item. Ines's plans were clearly getting stranger by the minute. Ines casually brushed off her maid's curiosity about the thick wire. With a dismissive smile, she claimed it was just a strange errand from her father and that she knew nothing about it. Declaring it was time to go home, they began to walk away. But as they did, Ines suddenly froze. An unsettling, dark energy filled the air, and she whipped her head around, her instincts screaming. A cold dread washed over her as she realized, with absolute certainty, that someone was watching her every move. Her maid Susan asked what was wrong. Ines's voice was a tense whisper as she confirmed they were being followed. She simply told Susan to stay quiet and follow her lead for now. This was no time for questions. Without warning, Ines pulled her maid into a quiet alleyway. Confused, Susan asked what was going on. Ines's voice was low and steady as she explained that their stalker was about to appear right behind them. She revealed he had been trailing them for a while, a fatal mistake on his part. Her eyes narrowed with cold fury as she gave a quiet, sharp command to her hidden guards. With no room for error, she ordered them to seize the man immediately. Her trap was sprung. As the stalker rounded the corner, Ines's guards burst from the shadows, seizing him in an instant. The man grunted as they pinned his arms, caught completely off guard. Ines turned to face him, her expression cold as she demanded to know why he was following her. A name flashed in her mind: Jemmerin Winningston. To her surprise, the man wasn't scared. Instead, a strange smirk spread across his face as he looked up, his eyes filled with an unsettling amusement. He was clearly enjoying this dangerous game. The stalker's smug act wasn't fooling Ines for a second. He coolly claimed he was just running errands at the market. Ines scoffed, asking if he really expected her to believe this was a coincidence. Playing dumb, the man just smirked back at her. Suddenly, a powerful hand shot out and gripped the stalker's face, cutting him off. It was Carson. The man yelped, insisting he was only out buying tea leaves. But instead of interrogating him further, Carson calmly ordered his men to release him for now. As the stalker walked away, Ines's eyes narrowed. She told him that if this truly was a coincidence, then she trusted they would never cross paths again, not even by chance. The man simply smirked before disappearing into the crowd. Walking beside her, Noah couldn't hide his concern. He asked if it was really okay to let him go, revealing that he'd seen something strange recently. Intrigued by this new piece of information, Ines immediately asked him to explain what he saw. Noah began his story, explaining that he'd gone back to the carriage to get something he'd left behind. Peeking inside, he found a complete stranger he'd never seen before. But what the man was doing was deeply unsettling. He was hunched over, his face pressed right against the seat where Ines had been sitting, sniffing the fabric. The disgusting image made Ines gasp and shudder. In the flashback, the man realized he was caught and scrambled out of the carriage in a panic, fleeing the scene immediately. Noah explained that he was so horrified he screamed, but the man just shoved him and took off. He admitted he initially thought it was a random weirdo, so he didn't say anything. But now he realized the stalker they just released had the exact same build. Hearing this, Ines's hand clenched into a tight fist. A cold, chilling memory washed over her, recalling Joseph's terrible actions from the past. A horrifying thought struck her. Was her twisted husband repeating his sick games all over again in this new place? A cold fire ignited in Ines's eyes. She silently promised that whoever this creep was, he was rushing headfirst towards his own grave. Her resolve was set in stone. Meanwhile, at the grand Swendon household, an unexpected guest had arrived. The man calmly lifted his teacup from its saucer. He offered a polite apology for dropping by so suddenly, his intentions still a complete mystery. The unexpected visitor explained he had to leave his territory on urgent business and decided to stop by. Viscount Swendon, Ines's father, seemed to understand. He then cut straight to the point, mentioning the rumors he'd heard about his daughter and the lord. The Viscount worriedly noted that Ines always seems to suffer whenever a handsome man enters her life. Abruptly changing the topic, he asked Carson how he planned to manage the mine. The question caught Carson completely off guard, and he asked if the Viscount was referring to the one on their land. Viscount Swendon confirmed his odd question, offering to send his own people to help if managing the mine was proving difficult. Carson was completely baffled. His family's mine was tiny, so why would he need help? He explained that their operation was small and easy to manage, asking if Ines hadn't mentioned it. But her father just cryptically replied that he would wait for her to bring it up herself. Then it suddenly clicked. A memory of him and Ines flashed in his mind, and Carson finally understood. The Viscount wasn't talking about land at all. As they walked together, Carson delivered some long-awaited news. He told Ines that Count Graham's trial was scheduled for the following week, and it would be a private affair. A small, satisfied smile played on Ines's lips. She felt a wave of triumph, realizing her elaborate revenge was finally unfolding, one target at a time. When Carson offered to get her on the attendance list, she eagerly accepted. In her excitement, she gripped a book so tightly that Carson gently took her hand, warning her that she might hurt herself. The book slipped from Ines's grasp, clattering to the ground. She quickly apologized, but her face went pale as a portrait fluttered out from its pages. It was a drawing of Carson. Mortified, Ines lunged for it, frantically demanding he give it back. But Carson was faster. He deftly snatched the picture from the air, a curious smirk on his face. He looked down at the drawing, realizing with amusement that it was a portrait of him. Ines could only freeze in place, caught red-handed and utterly embarrassed. With a smug grin, Carson asked where Ines got the drawing. Completely flustered, she stammered that her maid had saved it for her. Trying to deflect, Ines insisted she wasn't the only one. She launched into a rambling excuse, claiming that nobles and commoners across the empire owned his portrait because he was the most handsome man alive. Carson, silently amused by her long-winded defense, let her finish. Then, he went in for the kill, calmly asking if she owned portraits of anyone else. The sudden silence was deafening. Cornered, Ines quickly denied having any other portraits. Seeing her flustered reaction was all the confirmation Carson needed. With a satisfied look, he told her that was enough and handed the book back. Changing the subject, he announced they would go out on Monday. A confused Ines asked where they were headed. Carson reminded her she had something to show him. He then turned with a knowing smirk, adding that while she'd claimed to have a question for him, he believed he already had his answer. On the day of their meeting, Ines unrolled a large map before Carson. With a determined look, she pointed to a specific spot on the terrain. Carson leaned in, explaining that a new road was planned to run along that exact path. Seizing her moment, Ines unveiled her grand ambition. She planned to establish a new railway station in the town of Swendon. This was a massive change from her past life. She explained that after Swendon, the railway would cut straight through the Rizonia region, connecting the territories in a completely new way. Carson considered her ambitious railway plan and asked what lay at its end. Before Ines could reply, he answered his own question, the sea. A little surprised, she repeated his words, noting that an ocean was entirely different from a lake. Carson recalled visiting the coast as a child, a memory that filled him with peace. He explained that just calling it beautiful wasn't enough to describe the feeling. As a boy watching the endless waves crash, a profound thought had occurred to him while staring at something so vast and magnificent. Carson continued, explaining that the waves belonged to no one. They endlessly crash and shatter, a thought he found a little sad. But he knew that even if they slipped away and changed their shape, the waves would always return to him. As his thought trailed off, a serene vision of Ines filled his mind. The atmosphere shifted, and bathed in a new golden light, Carson looked at her with intensity. Breaking the silence, he asked Ines if she wanted to see the sea. Moved by his words, Ines agrees, wanting to see the beautiful ocean he described. A confident smile spreads across Carson's face as he makes a bold promise. He will be the one to take her to the sea for the first time. To do this, he will secure the rights to build the railway, creating a path across the entire empire. This is his reason for heading to the capital. However, he explains the original project was backed by Graham, who is now on trial, leaving the rights up for grabs. Carson's expression grows serious. He reveals a major roadblock. Taking down Graham alone won't be enough. The cunning noble has already finalized the entire railway project under a different name. This means even with Graham facing justice, the situation won't change. Ines's hope wavers at this difficult news, but Carson quickly dismisses her concerns. He declares that while it won't be easy, it's not impossible. His plan is simple. They'll hit them where it hurts. By cutting off all their funding, he will force them to give up the management rights. Ines worries that Carson's plan to cut off funding will take too long. As she speaks, her eyes fall upon the railway map spread before them. Her expression shifts as she points to a specific spot, declaring with certainty that the planned route is wrong. A confused Carson asks her to explain. Ines reveals a fatal flaw in their enemy's project. The land for Pistera, the station just before the final stop, is completely unsuitable for railway construction. Stunned, Carson demands to know how she could have such specific information. Ines flinches, a dark memory of being forced to work on that very project flashing in her mind. She remembers the ground constantly giving way. Hiding the truth, she simply says she read it somewhere. She explains that Pistra Mountain has weak ground, so the more they dig, the more it will keep collapsing. Carson puts the pieces together. If the ground is that weak, tunneling through the mountain is impossible. He questions how she knew this critical detail when the experts who spent years on the project supposedly didn't. As Ines worries her flimsy excuse won't be enough, Carson completely surprises her. Instead of doubting her, he turns and orders his associate to go and confirm the information immediately. Ines is left completely stunned. He believed her without a single question, and her heart flutters at his sudden, absolute trust. Carson decides there's no harm in verifying her claim. But more than that, he trusts her completely. A soft smile appears on his face as he thinks, if Ines says so, it must be true. He gently takes her hand, and she timidly asks if she was truly helpful. Carson reassures her that she was. He explains that if her information is correct, the project will be cancelled, and the railway rights will fall directly to him. Turning to leave, before leaving, Carson gives one last instruction, telling her to try not to cause any trouble while he's gone. With a confident smile, Ines promises to do her best. He releases her hand, his expression turning serious as he says that in 2 months, a lot will have changed for both of them. The weight of his words settles on Ines for a moment. Then, with a soft, genuine smile, she wishes him a safe journey. 2 months pass in the blink of an eye, and the day of Count Graham's trial is finally here. Ines enters the solemn courtroom, her posture radiating confidence as she moves toward her designated seat. Her gaze sweeps across the room, quickly finding the members of the Graham household already seated. However, she notices a crucial person is missing. A single thought dominates her mind. Why isn't Joseph here? His absence on this critical day feels strange and sets her on edge. Something is definitely off. Suddenly, the defendant is brought into the courtroom. It's Count Graham, and he looks like an absolute wreck. Ines watches him, a small, satisfying smile on her lips, as she notes how utterly ruined he appears. The judge's voice echoes through the hall, officially beginning the trial for the attempted assassination of a royal family member. As Count Graham kneels in disgrace, the first witness is called to testify. Lena Merriere steps forward with purpose, places her hand on the holy book, and swears to speak only the truth, ready to deliver the final blow. Lena begins her testimony, declaring that Count Graham had threatened her. He ordered her to harm Her Highness, using Lena's own 3-year-old child as leverage to force her compliance. The Count explodes in outrage, shouting that she is spouting absolute nonsense. But Lena isn't finished. She reveals the real reason she went along with the plan. He had forced her to take a drug. She even reminds him that he gave her an extra dose, just in case she got scared and tried to run. The judge calls for the next witness. A terrified staff member named Noah is brought in. He confesses that he was ordered to give Lena the drug. Count Graham explodes in fury at the betrayal, but the judge silences him. The crimes are laid bare, threatening a child and orchestrating an attack on a royal. With a sharp slam of the gavel, the final sentence is declared. Count Graham is condemned to his end. As the sentence is carried out, Count Graham's family watches in pure shock. The disgraced Count is forced to his knees, his hands bound tightly. Reality crashes down on him, and he starts screaming in denial, completely losing his composure. An authoritative voice cuts through the chaos, commanding the guards to take the criminal away. From her seat, Ines watches the entire scene with an icy, detached expression. She can't help but think to herself that the trial was over far too quickly. It felt almost too easy. The Empress smiled, completely satisfied. By tomorrow, the newspapers would be filled with headlines announcing Count Graham's final sentence. Now, she could only wonder how Joseph would react to the news. Meanwhile, Joseph was in a total panic. He crushed a letter in his hand, cursing under his breath as he realized everything was going wrong. His perfect plan was crumbling into dust before his very eyes. Feeling the situation slip from his grasp, he knew there was only one thing to do. He had to see Ines